Despite what the clock on the wall says, I think we are actually past 7 p.m. And so I would like to call to order this October regular board meeting of the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners. First item of business is remote attendance, but since all 5 commissioners are here, I don't think there's anybody to attend remotely. So brings us to accepting the agenda for the meeting, and I know of no suggested changes. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded, and since we are meeting in person, we can actually just do this by a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries unanimously, I believe, with all 5 commissioners voting. Next item is public comment. And I would ask if there is anyone here tonight.
Careful.
Okay, we have a list of people. Okay. And just as a reminder for everyone, under our rules, we allow 3 minutes for public comment from each individual. And so in no particular order except the one as they are appearing here. First name is Alexandria, and I'm sorry, I can't read and pronounce it, but okay. Would you care to come up and address the board so that, or did you just want to make written comment?
I just have a written comment unless you'd like me to speak.
Would you be willing to come up to speak into the microphone so we can have a better chance to understand you, and also for the folks watching back home, please?
I wrote on the card, I don't support the mandate. I believe it could be a precedent for future mandates. I believe this one is culture-centric, and that's something that our diversity training we had recently is trying to avoid. I have highlighted numerous things in an article that we were just trained on to be against this type of situation.
Okay. Anything else you wish to add to that?
I think that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight to speak to us. Next card is for Brad Johnson. Could come up.
Yeah, I too am against the mandate. My reasons are more of I'm just not sold out from the medical professionals that I've talked to and heard from. It's just not across the board that it's safe, in my belief, and from the professionals that I've heard from. So in the future, I'm not against it. I've had both pneumonia shots, flu shots I get, but this one, my heart's telling me to hold off on it, and usually listening to my heart is pretty, if I listen to that, I usually get steered in the right direction. So that's pretty much all.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming out tonight, Brad. Next card is Georgina Donoho.
I am here as to represent those that don't believe that they should be forced in a mandated vaccination. I totally agree. I think it should be our choice, it shouldn't be mandated. I know the COVID thing is real. I totally understand. I'm fully vaccinated. I have no qualms about it, but a lot of people are still on the fence. It's, it was rushed, the vaccine. I know it had like a pre-base for certain, viruses. It's already in place. And then, but it's just, our choice, our liberties, our constitutional right to not have to take a vaccine, I believe. So I'm just here in support of my fellow coworkers.
Thank you very much for coming out to address us tonight. And last card is Rich Mcmahon.
Hope it's okay that I wrote things down so I could kind of stay on track and not lose focus. My name is Rich Mcmahon. I'm the grounds maintenance supervisor and have worked at the Urbana Park District for 22 years. I've always considered myself lucky to have a job here. This goes for my current position as well as my previous one as the athletic fields technician. Having said all that, I think it's wrong to force the vaccine mandate on people against their will. I understand there's lots of data that shows the vaccine is safe and that it works, but there's also data that tells a different story. There are lots of doctors who rave about the vaccine and say that everyone should do the right thing and get it. There are other doctors who don't say that, one of whom sat in my house and pointed out all the concerns that go against the grain of the everybody must get the vaccine argument. Over these past 16 months, I've done everything the Park District has asked me to do, as far as wearing masks, being socially distanced, staying home if I felt sick, making sure everyone has their own vehicle, and being short-staffed in order to make that possible. I've been more than happy to come to work every day since June 1st of last year because I wasn't scared and I thought it's where I should be. I've tried to be a good soldier, but I think this is going too far. I will try to get an exemption. If I'm lucky enough to be granted one, I'll have to visit a testing site twice a week on my own time, even though I'll probably be symptom-free on nearly every occasion. How long will this go on? A month? 3 months? A year? 2 years? I'm afraid the only thing that'll put an end to this testing requirement will be the next step, when the president or the governor decides there should no longer be any exemptions and that people should be forced to choose between getting the vaccine or losing their job. A few weeks ago, I would have said, oh, it'll never come to that. But now I'm pretty certain that it will. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight to address this. It is not normally board policy to immediately respond to this. We will discuss the item at the point in the agenda where we normally will address it. But again, and repeating to all of you, we appreciate you coming out and expressing your opinion to us.
All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
There are no new staff introductions, so we'll move on to the UPDAC committee report. Or the UPDAC report. That's redundant to call it the UPDAC committee report. Any questions or comments on the UPDAC report? Then we shall move on to the consent agenda for the evening. And tonight's consent agenda has the following items on it. Approval of minutes of the September 7th board study session. Approval of minutes of the September 14th regular board meeting. Receipt of the monthly departmental reports. Approval of the monthly paid accounts payable. and action to accept the philanthropy report and gifts listed with gratitude. And under our consent agenda rules, it's the purview of any single commissioner to remove any or all of these items from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Is there any commissioner wishing to remove any item from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing no indication of that, is there a commissioner willing to make a motion that we approve all the items on the consent agenda in an omnibus fashion?
So move. Second.
That's been moved and seconded, and under the rules of the consent agenda, at this point, there is to be no further discussion, and we need to hold a roll call vote, beginning at the right with Roger.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and that carries unanimously. And that takes us on to the reports section of the agenda.
Okay, I guess that means I'm up. I'm going to be going over with you the results of for the Park District through the month of September 2021. The first report that I'll be discussing is the Revenue and Expenditure Report. This report shows the receipts and expenditures for the prior 12-month period, the budget for the current period, and the preliminary unaudited results for the 5 months ending September 30th, 2021. The first page of this report we call Sum 1, and it is all funds of the district except for the Capital Improvements Fund. So this shows kind of the operations side of the Park District, the ongoing operating side. Revenues for this period were $7,469,000, which is an increase of $2,413,000 since August. $6.3 million in revenues are property taxes, and we received our 4th property tax distribution for levy year 2020 on September 8th. With camps and programs running and pools open, we performed as anticipated in comparison to budgeted expectations, which is a relief compared to last summer. To compare with 2019, which we would call our last normal year, we had earned $769,000 in fees at this same point in time in the year, which was 57% of the budget for fees. But if you look at the fees line on this report, we are at $652,000, but we have reduced our budgeted expectations to be more in line with limitations for COVID, and we have actually reached 66% of our budget for fees. So we're ahead percentage-wise in our budget, so that's encouraging. I'd also previously reported in more detail that our outdoor pool exceeded its budgeted expectations for daily admissions and public rentals, and that we will be able to make our full budgeted transfer amount of $33,000 for the outdoor pool into the replacement and renewal fund, which is calculated based on 12.5% of earned revenues. Moving on to the expenditure section of the report towards the bottom of the page, expenditures for this period were $3,533,000, and which is a change of $559,000 since August. We have a surplus after 5 months, which means there's an excess of revenues over expenditures paid of $3,935,000, which we'll continue to spend throughout the year. And as you know, our property taxes all come in the summer months. The payments are due to the county in June and September, so our budget's very front-loaded with revenue that then we spend down throughout the rest of the year.
Is this about the normal normal percentage you'd expect for property taxes at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they've been running about a month behind.
Okay.
So we used to always get the payment at the last week of the month, and now we're getting it the first week of the following month. So when you're looking at it like this, you're kind of a month behind our normal schedule. But it's been this way now for 3 or 4 years, so this is kind of normal at this point. And it's better than it used to be, because they were even coming even later than that week.
remember.
So to the point that it was like kind of causing trouble for some school districts and stuff whose fiscal year was ending towards that first payment, and that luckily none of that affected us, but it hasn't been an issue for us, and even this kind of late week thing hasn't been an issue. The second page of the report we call Sum 2, and is only a picture of the Capital Improvements Fund. So the Capital Improvements Fund had revenues for this 5-month period of $160,000. And the negative interest amount that you see in the year-to-date balance column is from interest accruals for CDs for interest earned and recognized in FY21 in the prior fiscal year, but the cash will be received in FY22. So whenever that cash is received, that negative balance clears out, but the revenue was properly recognized in the prior year. Expenditures for this period were $746,000, and expenditures exceed revenues at this point in time, which leaves a net decrease in fund balance in the Capital Improvements Fund of $587,000. And sum 3, the third page of this report, is all funds district-wide. It takes the first 2 pages and adds them together for an entire district-wide picture. And I like to note that the ending fund balance for the whole district is $20,595,000. And following that are the individual summary reports for our main working funds: general, recreation, museum, and the indoor pool. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that report before I move on. Okay. All right, hearing none, then I'm going to move on to present the treasurer's report. And this is a report of the amount of cash that the district has on one day, September 30th, 2021. The first page of this report, all 24 funds are listed with where that cash is invested for a grand total for September of $18,466,686.53. At the top of the next page, this section lists amounts that we have in interest-bearing accounts. So of the $18,467,000 on hand, the district has $16,200,000 in investments. I have been slowly watching and waiting to reinvest some of our CDs as I'm able to capture some more competitive interest rates, but it's slow going. So, but I've started to see some just kind of like plateauing, I guess, and maybe a slight improvement. So that's encouraging.
So this is the section where, when the Brown money comes in, there'll be a separate.
Yep, it'll be right
There, right?
below or above, wherever, but kind of right in that section where the English pool
Yeah, okay.
is. It'll have a separate line. Yep.
Okay.
It'll have its own line
Good.
that we can watch and monitor, because that's what Roger was actually asking me earlier, what kind of interest that we're getting on this Busey Wealth Management. And you can see for the current Busey Wealth Management account that we do have for the English pool, we're paying 0.4% for fees, and we are getting an average right now just for this month of 2.49 for interest, which, if you look at our other interest rates, that's pretty good. But it's been better than that too. I think it's also just kind of taken a general downturn as everything's kind of gone down, but these investments are so much further out that they have a lot more stability. So, and then since the
Right,
Brown
and-
Fund will be similar.
I mean, isn't it also the case that being longer term, there's kind of a lag factor
Right.
compared to short term investments?
Absolutely.
That-
Yeah, maybe
so when things start going up short term, that can
Maybe we'll skip right over this bad interest rate period. I don't know. Yeah.
Katie, are there the same restrictions on how Busey can invest that money so it's the same as the Park District's money?
Yeah,
is
so
it?
we share our investment policy with them and they adhere to it.
Okay,
Which
which is why it's so low.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's part of it. And we have made some changes that they do have, our current investment policy, we did make a recent change, it was last March, that allowed for some very small amount of some shorter term investments that you could potentially
right.
get, but they're not doing any of that, and neither am I. So, but it's out there that they could. Yeah, so that's a lot of it. All right, any other investment questions? I can move on. All right, cool. There was no changes to interfund loans this period. And on the third page, the last page of the report, we had total disbursements of funds for the Park District for the month of September of $671,000, which really is a pretty average September for the UPD. You've heard me say lots of times before that kind of a baseline month is around $500,000 for us. That would be, 2 payrolls and just, general operating expenditures to keep all of our lights on. And so with September, you're going to expect that to be slightly higher just because we do have our after-school programs up and running, swim lessons going. So a lot more kind of happenings going on than just a base. But it's still pretty average.
Sorry, can I go back and just
Yeah,
ask
please.
about the set aside for the hospitals?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that.
I mean, just, can you remind us like how many years we've been setting aside and?
A long time,
I mean-
a long time.
Ken?
I think
Just for, not just for presents, we were, which, is it still presents because that no longer exists in Champaign?
it actually is just for presents.
Okay.
And when OSF bought presents, this liability didn't carry over. So this is actually still for presents. It's a liability that's only for presents.
And they still exist somewhere in the
I
universe.
guess. I mean, this liability, they did not purchase this liability as part of their agreement to purchase OSF. OSF didn't, so it didn't transfer. When it went for Pravina to presents, it did. So then it became presents, but it actually was Pravina's liability originally. But there's actually two different liabilities going on here. One of them, this larger one, the 1,085,000, is related to the TIF 3 money that they had. So the entire time that Presence was in a TIF, the city of Urbana, as part of their TIF district, was accumulating the amount of the increase in EAV that Presence added to their property that they were paying taxes on. So our park district continued to receive that base amount while the city accumulated all the extra from them making improvements on the property. At the time of the closeout of the TIF, any monies that weren't used for TIF incentives were given back to the district, and there was some overage there that was given back to us, as well as all the other districts that were part of this district, that Presence is part of their district. And ours was $1,085,000. But Presence at that time also initiated a lawsuit to try to get this back because they're saying they're exempt and they never should have had to pay it. And so at the time we received this money, we also got a letter from the treasurer's office telling us to reserve it as a liability, and which is a good thing because without that kind of backing from the treasurer's office with that letter, we probably would have had to recognize it as revenue and then come up with it later when it was time to repay it. So by reserving it in this liability is a good thing for us. It protects us from having to come up with it later, that it's kind of been usurped down into fund balance and we have this kind of unknown where it's going to come from in the future. The other small amount is just the other lawsuit that they have pending in the courts related to their tax exemption. But both of these, that's just what we've received ourselves actually, not what came from the TIF, that 20,000 is. But both of those lawsuits are on hold because of the Carl lawsuit that we're not a part of. They won't take this lawsuit up until the Carl lawsuit is resolved. That's what the courts have said.
So this is like in perpetuity.
I don't know. I mean, at this point, the way
Past our lifetime, some
the
of our
status
I just
lifetimes,
wanted to
think.
get a check.
the status of the Carl lawsuit, the last I had to update, because I have to tell our auditors about it for the audit, is it got kicked back down to the appellate court level, or actually to the county level for further review, because the appellate court tried to say that the tax law was unconstitutional. It got appealed to the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Illinois Supreme Court told the appellate court they didn't have the authority to say it was unconstitutional. They were supposed to weigh in on whether or not the way the law was stated was, that whether or not the case was valid based on the current law. They weren't supposed to say, no, it was unconstitutional. So it got kicked all the way back down, and then they kind of are starting over, and I haven't heard anything about scheduled hearings or anything. And honestly, I hear about most of it from the News Gazette. Like I don't have any insider information about the cases. So, but I do know that they've been told this Presence lawsuit won't be taken up until Carl's resolved. So it could be a long time, but I do confirm these figures every year so we know they're current. We're not accumulating any interest, which in the end there could be some negative, I guess, some additional liability to the district, because if they do say we owe a refund and they say with interest, well, where's that coming from? We're only reserving the principal that the treasurer's office told us to. So
You think that's safe? Are you comfortable with that?
I don't know that I would have the authority to hold back anymore. You see what I'm saying? Because that's not what we were told to do. And in a lot of the cases where they've done these kind of larger refunds, they have just said it just depends on the judge, right? We don't know. So It's just the best
Do
we
we
can do.
have sufficient records to be able to say precisely how much in interest we have collected on those specific funds?
Maybe. I mean, it would take some
Wait a minute,
finagling, but I mean, it's invested in CDs at
Yeah.
Commerce Bank. So, and I have a laddered CD program, and it's kind of shared between operating and this presence liability. And I just
guess
pool
what
them.
I was asking you basically is if the court says, oh, well, if you don't have the records, we're going to say 5% interest, which would be way higher
Oh,
than what we've
no.
been collecting.
I could piece the records back together. I have all the
For
paperwork. So.
5%, she would be busy.
Oh, yeah. No problem. No problem. So, yeah, that's not a problem. It's just like I haven't been maintaining interest records for this specific amount, but I have interest records for the whole account. So it wouldn't
so
be that
that's-
hard to
yeah,
allocate
yeah,
it. So,
So
so that's the long and the short of it.
I move we accept the
Welcome.
treasurer's report for audit.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments or questions? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, starting at the left with Cedric.
I,
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting.
Okay, great. Well, then the last thing I'll review pretty quickly is any changes in the capital budget since last time you looked at this last month. So any activity that occurred in September will be highlighted with an asterisk symbol. In the Series 2019A bonds, costs were paid towards an archaeological study for the health and wellness site. In this 2021 capital budget, expenditures occurred on tributes, on architectural design services for the roof repairs at the Phillips Rec Center, and on the purchase of shade structures for Ambucks Park. In the 2020 capital budget, expenditures were paid towards construction crew projects, Blair Park improvements from OSLAD and contingency funds, which are 2 separate line items in the budget that you'll see with asterisks. And a compact tractor was delivered, which the board actually previously voted to purchase in March of 2021.
yeah, that's low.
In the next one, in the Series 2019 capital budget, expenditures occurred only on Blair Park improvements, down on the contingency line towards the bottom. And same for the 2018 budget, just some little bits of Blair Park spilling over to these various budgets. And then there was no activity in the 2017 budget. And with that, now Andy and Derek may have some other updates for you on capital projects.
Sure, I'll start with Crystal Lake Park. We held a site walk with ERA and our landscaping contractor Cardno at the park this afternoon. Everyone was pleased with how things are coming along at the site in the first growing season. Cardno will be back to do some more weed management and any replacement of any trees that had died at the site later this fall. And then any plugs that are going to need replaced will occur next summer after we do our next evaluation in the spring with ERA. Would note our open road event was held on October 3rd. We had some issues with the weather that day, which kept participation down in the beginning. But once the weather cleared out throughout the day, we actually did get a pretty good crowd showing up at the large pavilion to review our proposed plans for the park and provide any feedback on the one-way road concept that we were kind of testing out that day as well. I had a few people note that they really liked the concept for a future one-way road transition, but they did let me know that they thought it was very important that we did keep vehicular traffic access through the park. And they just noted that there's a number of park users who rely on their vehicles for accessibility to get through the park. And so I took note of that, and it was a few separate individuals had that same comment. So that's kind of what we're intending to do anyway, but it was good to hear.
So did you feel it was generally a positive response?
Yeah, I think everyone I talked to was positive, had good feedback on all of our concepts.
Good, because oftentimes I would expect that the negative folks would be would be there in force because it's their chance to let you know. So that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah. We do have a survey that's online And we're keeping that survey posted on our website through October 24th. And if you've been to the park recently as well, we did put up yard signs that have renderings of the proposed one-way road concept, and those are located kind of where the renderings are taking place throughout the road. And then so any park users in this time can now do the QR scan on their phone and then be directed to a link for that survey as well during that period. I did want to note another kind of big initiative that's been taking place in the last few weeks. We've begun our public process for the replacement of Prairie Play. Our staff team had a kickoff meeting with Upland Design to begin working on that site master plan, as well as beginning to put together items on our strategy for upcoming future input opportunities. That's really going to take place over the course of the next 6 to 8 months. Currently, we have scheduled input opportunities at Prairie Play at the site. We have about 10 different locations or 10 different dates that were scheduled there. I think about half of those have already been completed this month. So what we're utilizing is kind of like a Mad Libs activity. So there's a paragraph that has a couple fill in the blanks where then playground users that we interact with would then be able to ask us any questions, talk about any concerns they have, but then also provide some input on what they want the new playground to feel, how they want to feel about it, and what they would like to see at a new playground site as well. And that's kind of like our first phase of public input for the process. And so then over the course of the next few months, we'll have, it's pretty similar to our pool input process, is where we'll have idea boards that will have specific amenities or site features that then people can vote on, and we'll have a ranking of those. With the pool we had slides, lap lanes, shade structures, landscaping, all that kind of stuff. So then we'll kind of phase 2 of the Prairie Play process is to get that data, and then Upland will utilize that information to create 3 concept designs that then we'll go back to the public again and get feedback on those 3 concepts, which is again similar to the pool, where we had 3 separate designs for the outdoor pool there.
If you need any reinforcement about the folks' attachment to the structure and the concrete tiles, if we call them tiles, somebody was telling me that there's a woman who's in her 30s. She knew a friend of hers from the 6th grade who moved about that time, said, "Go to the park, find my tile. I want it back." She hadn't, the person who wanted the tile essentially hadn't been back to town for all this time, but it was a really critical tie for her to that. And sometimes I think I'm still here, and so it's not the same sort of thing. But I think folks who have moved away, and especially people who were kids and had their names on that, it was a really big thing. And I was struck again about how important that is to people. And I think it reminds me too that it will be a good way for us to reconnect with the next generation, to find a way for them to feel part of that playground, aside from just the play capacity of the playground, and to be in at the at the laying of the tiles, at the whatever it is that we think we might do. So just if you needed it, there it is, a little reinforcement.
I think we have over 130 people so far that have signed up to get their tile back.
It's gone up a lot then.
Yeah.
How many tiles are there?
That's a good question. Tim and I were kind of doing a rough guess when we were out there on Saturday, and we think it might be about 1,000.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a lot.
Is there a form on the website or someplace?
Right now, everybody's directed to email Kara, and so she's been collecting all the contact information for everybody who's interested. I should also mention for folks that are watching at home, the MadLib tool is online right now. We have a web story, so if folks want to participate and they can't come out to one of our scheduled events, please go online and fill out the form.
Good.
You can also give us your email, so you'll be notified of future planning events. The schematic designs that Andy referenced, we want to pull everybody in for those as well. So far, I think the feedback we've gotten has been pretty positive. Certainly there's some folks that are going to be very sorry to see it go, and some folks that would rather see something exactly the same go back. But a lot of folks are thinking about other things and thinking about innovative play, exploration. The word safe has come up a lot, and so
Oh, interesting. In what, and,
Well, that's just
Can't
it with
see.
the Mad Lib. It's a one word answer, but safe is there a lot. And so we're going to do some additional exploration on what does that word mean to people.
oh, wow, yeah.
I just want to make sure we state it out loud. We are returning the tiles.
Yes.
We're not asking for people to give any money for the tiles.
Correct.
No
Yes.
hostages.
Right.
Hostages.
Well, I've just seen
Not
some
yet.
comments
No,
on
that's good.
social media,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that we clear the
Yeah.
air that if people want their tiles back, they
Yeah.
are theirs to come and
Yeah.
retrieve.
Thanks for clarifying.
Right.
Yeah,
We're-
I'm just-
we're-
Not yet, though.
Right, not
we-
yet.
We are not returning them, we are
Sorry.
making them available for them
Good point.
to recover.
They can be recovered.
I don't,
I wondered if somebody's come out and,
Right, okay.
yeah,
that's why we moved in this direction to try to
Yeah.
let people know.
So people
"Hey,
are not
no need to move
taking
them or
things-
take them, we got them, and we'll get them back to you."
Okay.
Like,
Yeah,
can
they-
we give
they-
them surveys with their tile back?
There you go. Input options, right.
Good call.
Yeah.
I do have a few pictures, like usual, for Blair. Not a lot this week. So kind of the main focus of work primarily in the last couple weeks is finishing up the pavement within the park. And so this is one of the last big stretches of the perimeter path that's still needed to be completed. We had a couple delays on this section. Here is another image of that same area. With some work for the utilities that were in our way, and we needed to kind of relocate or readjust the path a little bit to help minimize any impact to some of the trees that were in this area. It's a pretty tight little corridor to get the path in here. And then, so then going from the perimeter path towards the central area between the two tennis courts, they did get some of this paved today, but there's still a little bit more work to do there. The rain's been kind of holding them up more than they would like. Their goal is to finish up, or was to finish up the concrete this week, and then focus on finishing up the installation of like the basketball hoop, the block seating, the Cajun drums, and stuff like that early next week. But I'm a little nervous with the weather forecast if that's going to be feasible or not at this point.
Andy, are there one or two sort of cut-ins, if you will, on the west side for handicap parking? Because when I drove by there the other day, they were working on one, right? And I thought.
So recently they were putting in a ramp to get across.
Maybe that's what I was
I
seeing.
don't know if it's Vermont or what street that is exactly there, but they had to take some panels out of the path and the perimeter so they can get their ADA grades going down and then make that
Okay, maybe that's what I was
ramp
seeing then.
connection.
Yeah.
But there are two ADA parking stalls, one on the east side.
Well, that's what I was
It'd be
thinking, that there was just one on each
It'd
side.
be, the southeast by the T-ball field, and
Yeah.
then the other one that.
Okay, then that is what I was seeing. Okay, thanks. It's really looking wonderful.
And then here's looking towards that path and the challenge course area on the left. We did do a site walk for that challenge course area to kind of do our punch list items, so we could kind of clear the contractor out of that zone, and so that it would be ready for Keith whenever he's finished up with the playground to start doing the installation of our challenge course pieces. And then a couple pictures here of Keith's work recently on installing the playground. And then I tried to get a closer picture. You can see the colors and how I think it goes really well actually with the playground color selection that we had, and the colored concrete with the blue, silver, and then a little pop of color with green occasionally in there as well. So I've been really happy with how this area has been turned out. That's all the pictures I have for this month. Happy to answer any questions.
Looks
I'll
good.
just add that, when Andy mentioned the open road event, and the attendance was, picked up a little bit at the end, but we didn't get quite the numbers we were hoping for. Obviously, we still have information out there, but we're planning on being out at Turkey Trot, same sort of information.
Yeah, that's a good
and
idea.
There'll be a good crowd there, so. But yeah, I think so far, the feedback we've gotten has been largely positive. I think the only question I had was from former City of Urbana planner, now Forest Preserve District Director. She wondered how the parking's going to go over with the new pavilion area, the up deck outdoor learning pavilion. And We didn't get any comment from public on that, but it's something we want to talk to neighbors more about, because we realized that anytime you add parking to an area, you know, it can elicit different responses.
Okay, there are no further questions. I think we're ready for the executive director's report.
I have one more report. Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
Just
sorry.
to walk you through the planning packet really quickly for the bond sale, I just wanted to draw your attention to 2 pages. Page 3 is the schedule. And you're welcome to read through this information, and if you have any other questions, reach out. But just wanted to draw your attention to the schedule. This is our annual rollover bond sale. We do this every year. It's a pretty routine process at this point. We do not have to BINA this year. There's a additional step called a BINA hearing that we have to do every 3 years. We'll have to do that next year. This is our last of the 3 years, that kind of bumps our whole GO bond sale process up by a month, because you have to do that hearing the month before. But we don't have to do that, so it's a little easier this year. We will hold the competitive sale. Spear will hold the competitive sale on Thursday, December 9th. The board will accept the bond ordinance at the following regular board meeting on December 14th. And then the closing of the sale will be on December 28th. So we'll have 2 weeks in there to get signatures around Christmas. Hopefully it won't be too hard to get all those signatures collected. And then the other page that I wanted to draw your attention to is page 9. This is the preliminary schedule for what the bond issue will look like. So it'll be a 1-year rollover bond. It's estimated to be proceeds of $872,000. That's after the interest of $8,264. So that's about $9,000 more than we got in proceeds last year. So that's and that's because of the increase in the debt service extension base that we're granted each year based on the change in this consumer price index. And cost of issuance then will have to come out of that principal, and that's estimated right now to be at $11,500, which is $200 more than last year. But that's the basics of the entire issue. Happy to answer any questions about that, but I think it's just going to be kind of a real easy year. Yeah. And that's also on the agenda for later tonight, is to look over the budget that these funds will be spent on. So Andy will go over that later.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, then we're ready to move on to the executive director's report.
Just a few updates. Just wanted to thank Savannah Donovan for all the work she's doing with C4, that's the Champaign County Climate Coalition. She's leading that group, and it's really picking up a lot of energy. There's monthly meetings, there's social events. I think there's really some exciting agenda items that there are kind of multiple groups in the community are working on. So again, I think we spearheaded it, kind of got it up off the ground, and now it's really starting to, pull people in. So there's room for more. It's a very open group. Again, they have social activities. Example would be going out to Riggs for green drinks, but the idea is that there's a think tank, kind of a sharing of ideas. So it's basically an extension of the meeting at a social setting. There's some events and activities planned, for the future. So just really pleased that with a relatively short time, that group's got up and moving, and it's drawing other people in. And I think good thanks to the UPD for being there. Little quick update on Southridge Park. I think we talked about it at UPDAC, but I want to make sure the board all heard it. I think Meredith also mentioned a comment to me, but it really stems from a small piece of property that was offered to us many years ago as one of the extensions of the housing development. I wanted to mention it in case you had heard anything in town recently, but way back in 2003 and 4, I think there was interest in making an offer for the Park District to take on small parcel that would be a detention basin that would have some extended trail through it. It was about the same time and after that we had gone through our own strategic planning efforts, and we reorganized our open space standards. If you remember back then, we were looking also at how do we grow the district? Do we get more land through new developments, or as developers, would offer something, could they extend some open space? That led to maybe there should be a discussion about a land cash ordinance or some sort of, mechanism to get local developers to pay for the expansion in the open space area. So if you recall, I think CCDC Foundation brought in John Crompton. We had both park districts, CCDC Foundation, Forest Preserve, I think all looked at it kind of as a group. I think there was a lot of interest. We invited developers in. I think there was not a lot of support from the development community.
That's putting it
If you
mildly.
remember, there was at
Yeah.
least one group that said they wouldn't develop in Urbana, again, if there was, an ordinance. So I think we kind of looked at what we were facing and decided maybe that wouldn't be the time to launch that. But as part of that process, we really thought our standards have to be upheld and, we need to acquire land that's usable. As we take on less desirable landscapes, they can be costly and they provide little return.
Yeah.
So the end result was, we let Carl Hill at Hillshire Realty know that we couldn't accept that land. So the plan was then to create a homeowner association as the houses get built out, and they would also pay a fee, and that's how they would manage, the mowing and care for that site. So the homeowner association just got up off the ground. I'm not sure why it takes a while or how that came about. I know Carl, I play sand volleyball every week with him, and so I see him all the time. He had asked me again over the summer, hey, would the board, reconsider? And I said, not based on our current standards. I think they had already answered that, in the past. So it was sort of a past, situation. But because the homeowner association's up and going, and I know at least one UPDAC woman asked, our member, Ashley, asked, hey, do you know anything about this? So I did address it to UPDAC, explained it all at the meeting last month, but I wanted to mention it to the board. And again, for, neighborhood parks, we're really desiring about 10 acres. So again, we don't take detention basins. I think, as you know, one of our next steps, I think you read my report about removing the sediment out of Crystal Lake Park, and that goes along with those kind of landscapes. They're wonderful to give away. People can't wait to give them away.
Yeah, why
Same-
would that be?
So, again, I think we need to be very careful that the landscapes, we do accept, and better examples of more recent, Del Coleman Park's a wonderful addition, Weaver Park's a wonderful addition. Those are landscapes that really can help grow a community. On the neighborhood level, they usually tend to go with development or housing or something like that. So we've continued to message to the city of Urbana, hey, can we get out in front of your growth and development? Let's start talking about open space now, so that we could either parcel where it's needed or if growth occurs. Probably the best tool we have is the city's comprehensive plan, which is a very long 20-year look into the future. So we've lagged. There's been a few developments. Savannah Green is an example that had a 1 acre site for 200 homes. Obviously, that's not a proportional relationship, and it doesn't suit their needs. Later, if you recall, I reported, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, they had come back and asked if we would take that lot, and they wanted to give it to us, and we had to say no, it didn't meet our standards. And it was a very challenging site to manage. So again, we only can promote our standards and talk about, the quality landscape spaces we need. But I did want to mention, in case you heard around town, or, hey, how did the park district just, not follow through or agree? We never agreed. We were very clear about that. And I think our thought was, if we're not going to get real direct help from developers, we really should stick to high standards.
Yeah.
There can be some give and take if you're working through multiple developments. There may be some better, but we're not getting any. So the fact is, we wouldn't want to take landscapes, that will cost us and have
Well, yeah, they're
little
just trying to
value.
give away a problem, really.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And, we're trying to be kind about it.
I won't be out.
But.
I'll just say it, trying to give us a problem.
So that's the situation, and the homeowner association's up and running, and, it's been accepted in the neighborhood, but just if it came up or you had other questions, wanted to certainly remind us of our past history.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out, even in Southridge, we only took that because the city agreed to do the rotting out of and cleaning out that stuff on a regular basis. I hope we're holding them to that agreement, but even when we took that, there were concerns,
Right.
and we had a partner in the city in dealing with it.
My recollection, Michael, there was some donated and some purchased as well, so it wasn't 100% donated land.
Right.
That's my recollection. But again, we're on the positive side. We'd love to talk with developers. Anybody that has ideas, I would say, please talk to us, because we're available, and I think we could probably help them. So I did want to mention that. Just want to mention the Finance Study Group had a very productive meeting. We reviewed the levy stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I think we shared, or if we didn't, we got very good news about our insurance plan for 2022. There was no change in the rates, and that our same plans will be provided. So that's wonderful news, and we're very pleased about that. Katie did have a follow-up conversation with the city of Urbana about any potential interest in joining their group again. I think she's interested in continuing the discussion. We'd like to learn more about that. So we'll see how that goes in the future. Crystal Lake Park Master Plan, we had another new discussion. We've re-engaged with the School for Designing a Society. Derek and I had a wonderful Zoom conversation sharing some of the early cut sheet plans of Crystal Lake Park and what's going to happen in the future. And I thought some of the areas we were directly talking about in our first meeting with them were fairly close to their house, on Franklin Street there on Broadway. So we definitely wanted to talk about it. In fact, the conversations were so full, we didn't get through the whole plan, and we agreed we'll connect for part 2. And so we'll keep that discussion going.
In the general tone?
I think there's a lot of interest in the old 901 site. We see a lot of opportunity
Oh.
in that space. Obviously, the part we didn't get to later is the land acquisition. We still, have a strong presence there. But again, from our perspective, it's not an aggressive plan, it's the 100-year plan.
Right.
I keep saying, as properties are available, people approach us, we would certainly, the answer would be yes, if we could, find a way to acquire. But again, we spent more time talking about common ground and where we could work and program and, improve the neighborhood together. So we're very pleased about that. Obviously, the goose situation came up. It was, mentioned a couple of times. We didn't have to go into deep discussion, and we continued moving forward. So I think it was a productive meeting, and I know we're planning to meet again. So I predict as we get more into the details at Crystal Lake, there'll be more interest. I think Derek mentioned already the open road event, October 3rd. One of the groups that helped with that event was Champaign County Bikes, and talking with Charlie Smythe and some of the others in that group, they're aware of these kind of road systems in other places around the world. I didn't really know this was happening. Well, they'll shut down major, roads or, highways, boulevards, whatnot, for these Sunday afternoon events. It's really wonderful. So there was a discussion of, hey, could we do this, maybe monthly at Crystal Lake? I think from the staff perspective, we had a pretty heavy staff hand on that event. So that would be like a special event once a month, for us. But we left the door open. Could we discuss it? Is it something volunteers could help with? Maybe we give it a little help and maybe people would just know. But I think the idea is there's more vibrant things, food, entertainment, kids' activities. In these other countries and places where they do it, it just sort of takes on its own event. People show up, bring picnics, they hang out. So it's a very neat concept. I think it's worth exploring. Maybe we can modify it or tweak it to where it would work for us. Maybe it becomes a special event where we do that. So again, that's a little slightly different than, right now we're planning for a shared road idea. This would be shut the road down and just have it all open, for those Sunday day in the parks.
But we had talked about that long-term because, right, as a potential one. I remember hearing conversations, Springfield does this,
Yes.
right, as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. And they've got
Once-
more and more.
But once
Yes.
there's a sort of an adoption to the new
Yes.
system,
Right.
then there seemed to be a
Right.
need for, or an enthusiasm for that,
Yes.
so, okay.
And so I just have a sense that could really pick up, and it could be an interesting opportunity. Saying it in reverse, we would love it if the community came out to Crystal Lake Park and had a wonderful family day every, time it was offered and really got a lot of buy-in. It could be a really cool thing. But just backing up slightly, we have our hands full getting the next steps in place and, the grants and getting the road project underway. So something to think about for the future. But it's pretty cool. Moving along, health and wellness, we're continuing to refine our donor list where there's still people that were on a list to start with that just haven't got to, and so we're divvying those names up. Everyone's going out after them. We have a number of businesses. Primarily, the first group is health-related businesses that, we could think of, and then other businesses, so we're starting to reach out with that. Got good news. Derek reported that the park agreement's on its way, so that was fantastic. I had a different note here to mention park, but remember the progression. Park agreement comes, that gives us money to hire and pay Farnsworth to get their work
Yep.
going. That information comes back to us, we refine it, goes to DCEO to give the information level they need, and they get what they need, and we get their additional $3 million. That's how it's supposed to work, and but getting this first part moving is encouraging. We're pleased about that. Do you have anything else, Derek, on that?
They just said to expect it within the week, and so we already let Farnsworth know, and they're eager to jump in.
Within the week?
Mhm.
So that's, great, because we're all
That's
kind of,
fabulous.
those are kind of the key things that'll get the whole engine up and running.
Yep.
And take off, so we're excited. Let's see. Moving on down to my list here, remember, let's see. Carolyn Trimble and I had a great presentation Sunday with the First Presbyterian of Urbana Church. They have a public session at 11 o'clock. They invite groups in to provide general information about what's happening in Urbana. Yeah, wonderful opportunity. We spent
idea.
25 minutes on a Zoom with, handfuls of people that were interested. There were a few donors that were already helping us in that group, but a lot of good questions. It's interesting when you go to another segment of Urbana, you realize, more people need to hear about this. Many were aware somewhat, they heard about it, but giving them more information, certainly real helpful. Following that, just a reminder, we have our celebration and pop-up play event, Saturday, October 23rd at Prairie Park from 11 to 12:30 p.m. that day. So come on out. I think we'll have some fun and games, and hopefully you'll get the neighborhood and some of our donor base out and have a good time there. So that was a invitation we could extend to that group too, to come out. Let's see. Corky and I had a staff retreat with the CU Special Rec staff this it was last Friday. Had a wonderful time. We had originally planned to meet at the lake house, but just thought, the closeness of being indoors, the weather wasn't great to sit out, so we did switch to a Zoom. But had a really good time going through all the strategic plan, all the details about the new CUSR center over at the old Leonard facility. We've got an UPDAC meeting scheduled to go over there, to be hosting over there. That was one of the UPDAC recommendations, to get that group, informed and up to speed on that. So we're anticipating that. And they're also having an open house coming up, I think, on the 21st. So if you would like to go over, certainly please do, and stop in and visit with them. We'll have Kelsey send out another reminder as we get close to that. But should be a good time, and staff's anticipating that. I think some positives that came out of the retreat is, we got to understand, that staff's been under a lot of pressure too. Programming, everything with the, pandemic has been, really challenging with their particular, participant base. And they have different, young kids, adults, some successes, and you'll probably hear more about it at our joint meeting in December, but that adult day program is really taken off. I think it's a hot ticket.
Oh, really?
I think more people are gonna really want to be a part of that, because it's really needed. There are no other, real options in the community for that, so that's sort of a upstart fledgling program. We got to know the staff. I should have said that first. We have a couple of new staff people that are newer. They all were contributing, just really, dialed in on the conversation. So I was very encouraged. Corky, did I skip anything? You have anything to add on that?
No, I think
We spent 3 hours.
the biggest thing about the adult day program is we never had a facility that could house them year round, so
Exactly,
now we have a facility that.
And more space too, right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're
So,
very excited about
I think
that.
it's gonna be a really good thing in the future.
Great.
They're building it, but they have a lot of interest so far, so.
Well, we wish it were in Urbana for a lot of reasons. It is in a great location. There's ample park space, there's good playground, adjacent.
Yep.
Other facilities, the new Leonard Center, I keep calling it that. The Leonard Center is open and available, so they can, use that facility. So it's, with the pool there in the summer, so it's a good location. Probably an equivalent would be putting them in Crystal Lake Park, where you had multiple facilities you
Yep,
could
right,
easily
right
walk
there,
to and,
yep.
and use on a daily basis. So, and we still know they'll come to Urbana. There's plenty of great facilities here, and they like getting out. Anytime you do the same thing, it gets boring after a while. So they want to be able to, go different places. So,
I was
good.
really interested in the fact that even some of the younger staff were really excited about making some new connections in Urbana and working with our school district, and
Great.
so.
other
Yeah.
creative ideas, maybe starting some younger kids
That's
to
really
build
young.
up for the Special Olympics program. So they saw that, hey, maybe we can start working with our younger to get them prepped and ready, or just in that queue. So
Yeah, well, that physical activity is good for,
Right.
for them, whatever age, I mean, for all of us, obviously, but for whatever age, though,
It was a good exchange too. I think the board gave the staff a lot of good ideas, new resources, who to check with, partnerships. So I think we were a good source of good ideas.
Good.
A lot of it we know, but with new staff, they don't know. So we were able to share those ideas and get that across. Just want to mention Prairie Play. I think Derek and Andy mentioned we're in the process already of getting input. There's opportunities online, out at the park. I think some common things we'd heard is, sort of that shock of, is it really time to do that? And I always remind people our, operations staff have kept that building or that structure really in great shape, all these 25 years. We've also had things that were taken out that, broke down or didn't work. Some have been replaced or modified, but some are missing. So I think when people really think about it, they realize the time span, and they can't think of another playground that's been there that long that's still vibrant. So it makes a good, talk. A lot of people want the stones. We heard that too. And some good ideas. I think a lot of folks had, while they couldn't maybe sketch it out or articulate it, I think some of their words that they used sort of have deep meaning. And so there'll be definitely good options, continue as we go. We have good outreach opportunities, want to get kids involved, get some young people working in like a charrette style with us to come up with some cool ideas. So that'll continue and go forward. If you haven't been over to the Indoor Aquatic Center, there's a wonderful glass art mural at the exterior of the building. Just beautiful, fantastic. We had the ribbon cutting last week. Small group gathered over there, and really pleased. That's the Urbana Arts Commission that leads that and funds it, but certainly we're one of the community partners, and that's a wonderful building to add that. I think we've already had a lot of positive comments about it. Looks terrific. The
well,
artist was
the
there.
interesting, I looked at it when I pulled into the parking lot, and I thought, oh, no, we won't be able to see out the windows. But you can.
Yeah.
You can see through it, which I had not anticipated, which is just terrific. I mean, it's a slight bit dimmer, but it's not.
Right.
It's not a blanking out of those windows at all.
Like when you're in a wrapped bus on MTD, you can still see out of the windows, but you can't necessarily
It's
see
like
in.
magic, really. Yeah, and it does look good.
Thanks
Yeah,
to-
and lots
Yep.
of the water folks have said the same thing.
Great.
Yep.
It's a huge canvas, and when, you see it up, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think they said it was the 6th glass art project that done in Urbana. So we've got the other one at the Phillips Center, so we have at least those 2 facilities, so.
And the
I-
life expectancy of that is,
Just a couple of years.
I think they usually say 5,
Yeah,
but
is it? Good.
I think we've been going longer with the one at Phillips.
I think so.
Or-
I suppose then maybe the exposure is what might make a
Yeah.
difference on it, yeah.
I enjoyed
This will be
talking.
the test.
Yeah, because it's south-facing, so yeah.
I talked to the artist. The piece is called Reef, which
Yeah.
I thought was cool. But she's a medical. She
A
is
medical
a
illustrator.
Illustrator. Yep.
illustrator
Right, yep.
for medical textbooks. I just thought that was so really interesting, and you can kind of see that in the art. So
Yeah, it's really, it's a great addition there. It looks
It is.
wonderful, yeah.
It's fantastic, and it's, years ago when we talked, how can we create more interest there? We thought of, outdoor things, outdoor sculpture, neon lights, but this glass art really simple, it's affordable, and it really makes a big
Well, and
big
it's somebody
statement.
local, which is even more fun.
We love it.
Yeah.
It was fun, and again, it was good turnout. It's kind of a interesting group, celebrating. Thank you, Cedric, for coming. We appreciated that, and the mayor was there, and it's just a nice little group to kick it off. Also want to mention there's 2 other art pieces coming from that program. There'll be some garden art at Victory Gardens and at Victory Park and Meadowbrook Park, if I have that correct. I think they're planning for a ribbon cutting coming up in the near future. There's small items, art pieces that'll fit on, says the raised beds. And I think there's some other pieces.
We
Yeah,
also purchased,
Toolboxes.
some toolboxes for our loan tool program for gardeners. It
So-
was one of the comments that came through the focus groups, is people wanted to have some sort of a loan tool program or a library for tools.
Oh, yeah, oh, what a
So
good idea.
this grant purchased the boxes and is gonna wrap them.
I think, are we calling for tools donated yet? I think we are. So if you have any garden tools that you would like to
Cleaning out
donate,
my garage.
connect with staff and we'll make sure they get put to good use.
6 feet or under. Yeah. Can't be too big.
Oh, that's not where it's gonna be. It's
Gotcha.
how big the box is.
Yes,
Okay, 6
exactly.
feet or shorter, yep.
So we'll see how that goes, and we think the art is gonna, really excite people that are out and passing through the parks. So good program and good partnerships. The Kickapoo Rail Trail Steering Committee is meeting in Urbana Friday. I think we're gonna tour the Urbana Edge. Last time I reported, we went to Danville and saw their connections, and just want to make sure everyone sees the Urbana connections. So what I'm recommending is a stop at Walmart, stop at Weaver Park, and then Leal Park to look at the potential extension. And I think when folks see how that works, we'll be able to see how Urbana and Danville really come together on this. So it's very exciting. We just wish it could go faster. We all want to put it on, fast forward to speed it up. But I think just knowing that there's a whole lot of interest and strong vision created, that's terrific. Because I know there was probably 5 years of a little bit of uncertainty, particularly to the east side of what's happening. And now we're seeing lots of interest pick up. The bridge is done. They just haven't had the ribbon cutting. And there's a lot of excitement in the east, I say east because they're east of us, towns about the Friends group, what's coming, and how people can get involved. So I think there's a lot of interest. I know Mike Dobb attended a meeting in Ogden. They have a beautification group in Ogden that wants to get involved with the trail. So those are the kind of things you always hope for and wait for and expect will happen. So we're really excited about that. And last item, let's see. Just want to update, the leadership team is meeting with all of our full-time staff groups. We're going in small groups, trying to meet in person to, really just talk, how are things going, mental health checks, get a kind of a read on staffing levels. We haven't finished all the groups yet, but trying to get feedback on, some of our big moves, strategic efforts. So I think we're getting a lot of good information. Probably the thing I could report on easily tonight is, probably just the overload of work. We have a lot of new things coming, and we haven't really had support staff, for 2 years. Last summer, we didn't really have a lot going, and this summer was some, but not full. And so lots of that work falls to the full-time staff, and so there was juggling and letting things, I'd say go, but set aside, and we need to come back. So it's, that's clear. So we want to definitely think about that as we go into goals, for next year. Something I'd also recommend too, with the health and wellness coming on, probably creating space for staff to get thoughtful about that. How do we get the recreation teams together? How do we get our operations teams to start thinking about the building and the operations and how that's going to be, put together without a lot. And it's easy to say that. We always end up having a lot of other things, but we really probably need some guardrails just so that we get focused on that building and make sure it lifts off and we do really well as we go there. And I can answer any questions on anything else. And certainly I'll report once we get through all the staff groups. We want to come back and update the board on, all the sort of the findings of that. But it's been a really good exchange so far. So that's all I had, Michael, if there's anything else.
Okay, well, sorry to have missed the end of that. So moving on to the President's report. In terms of upcoming meetings, again, Tim has already mentioned that UPDEC will be visiting the new CUSR Center. On the 2nd of November, we're going to have a board study session meeting with DEI updates and Fred Coleman, so I assume we're going to be learning more about getting minority contractors more involved in our activities. And then the regular board meeting on the 9th of November. Actually, I skipped one. We're going to have a special meeting a week from a week from tonight.
Yeah.
Where is that going to be?
I think it'll be here.
Here.
Yeah,
Okay,
and-
sure.
but it's at 5:30.
Yeah.
Tuesday, a week from tonight, the 19th.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
And Getting back to November 9th, is the public hearing for our truth in taxation, which relates to an item later in tonight's agenda, and action to approve the tax levy for the coming year, and approval of our non-referendum bond sale ordinance. I don't think Dave Phillips will be here to.
That'll be postponed, no, that'll be postponed to the December meeting anyway, but yeah, it'll be Aaron Gold, and I'll work with Kelsey to get that updated. Because we used to do this in the it's just calendared for the November annual actions, but it's actually been moved to a December annual action.
And also the annual capital project budget and capital budget revisions, and finally ADA transition plan. I did not have anything further in that regard. Moving on to liaison reports. The finance study group indeed discussed the 2022 levy and some of the options there, the bond sale, and seeking proposals for audit services. I mean, we were going to the end of our
Oh, are we?
current
This is-
contract with the auditors. We need to decide whether we're going to extend with the same auditors, or after the many years that it's been, whether we will, in terms of good practice, want to solicit requests for
Yeah, I think
proposals
we
from
need to
other
do that,
firms.
yeah.
So we need to, we will be needing to decide as a board on that point. And we talked about some capital project updates, most of which have been covered here tonight, I'm sure. And we're planning to meet again on the 12th of November. So, is there any questions? We can move on to the policy study group. Anything?
We will meet on November 16th.
Okay. And the Urbana Parks Foundation,
We met yesterday. Tim covered two of the three things that I was going to mention, which was...
Sorry, Roger.
No, that's
We'll have to compare notes in the future.
That's all right. Because he mentioned talking about trying to ramp up the fundraising. And one of the things that we talked about was not to say, okay, when we reach thus and such a goal, well, then we're done. But there are so many things that we can add on to the health and wellness facility in terms of outdoor amenities and other things. So I think that somewhat rejuvenated the group in terms of there are people that we need to talk to. And the other thing was the October 23rd event, which we're all encouraged to come to. And then we talked briefly about social media platforms, and Natalie was encouraged to think about Instagram, which she said, well, that's more of a picture thing, but when we come to the construction time, maybe a weekly Instagram posting would be really productive. So I don't use Instagram, but my daughter does and my son does, and everybody I know that's under 40 does. So but anyway, which I'm a long way from. But anyway, we talked about that, and that's it. We talked about many other things, most of which were kind of internal to the foundation. So.
Unless there are further questions for Roger, the UPDEC Planning Study Group. And I guess there's not much to report there.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Moving on to old business, which is action on any old business removed from the consent agenda, and there was no such.
Right.
Under new business, action on resolution 2021-10, establishing the Winona N. Brown and Richard M. Brown Fund.
I just wanted to jump in. I'm sure Katie will walk us through probably the next couple of items, but just wanted to let you all know how grateful we are to Dick and Winona for thinking of us. Obviously, long-term Urbana residents, UPDEC members, working with staff, just really engaged in our, what we're doing. Lived at Clark Lindsay, loved Meadowbrook Park, familiar
it's just
story.
The perfect place for
But
them.
just a wonderful way to give back
Yeah.
to us.
Wow. And
so
a very significant gift.
it's amazing. Obviously, we didn't know until now, what that was. So my advice to all of us, keep making relationships, talking with people, not in a crass way of, trying to get money, but I didn't know anything of what their, wherewithal would be. They were just wonderful people and were interested in Meadowbrook, always wanting to talk about it. And, I think at some point we had that talk, what kind of legacy could they, and so they were forthcoming. Hey, if this is what's going to be in our estate and here's how we'd like it to go, is this, a good thing for the park district? Absolutely, it's a good thing. And it's well placed, it's well defined. I did talk to Michael. I know he had a comment about one of the documents and some of the wording, but we can get to that
Yeah, we
as
can
we jump
definitely
into.
change anything you need to, but the memo basically, the memo that was in the packet covers the next 2 action items on the agenda. One is to establish a fund, which is actually a general ledger fund. That's what it means by fund. So we have the general fund, the recreation fund, the museum fund. So we'll create a new fund number and it'll be a separately maintained fund in our general ledger. So that's kind of what that meant. And then the second resolution is about opening a bank account with Busey Wealth Management to have them manage the funds for us, which is very similar to how they manage the English Trust Fund for us. So definitely welcome any comments. If we're not ready to sign this stuff tonight, that's not an issue either. But if there's, changes that we can make and adjust and you want to approve it that way too, we can do that.
Yeah, on the, in the resolution, on the 3rd page, the trustee acceptance, the date is 1999, 19909.
Which document are you in? Are
I'm
you
on the resolution.
Resolution.
The resolution, so the 3rd page,
to
the 3rd piece of paper.
the
We have 2
resolution?
resolutions,
Oh,
That's it.
2010.
10 and there's 11.
I'm at 10.
Okay. So
Those are exhibits. attached
Yeah.
to
Not
it.
3.
these are the trust documents. So
Yeah.
the
Right, but
resolution,
we wanna
Page on
have
the
it with a-
resolution.
the resolution's just page 1.
Oh, okay.
And this is exhibit A,
But
which
does-
is the
So it doesn't,
trust.
so we're not concerned about that fact that the date is May 15th, 19,909?
Well,
Where do you see that,
mean-
Nancy?
I'm not finding it.
Oh, they've marked it out.
Not in this one, they
On my
haven't.
version, the
Well,
extra
no, it's
9.
on the trustee resignation one, it's marked out, but it's
Oh,
not
oh.
marked out
Oh.
on the next page over.
I mean, those are their documents. This is
Yeah,
just
these
our
are-
Okay, so if
exhibit.
that doesn't affect it, that's
No.
okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted
Just
to make
supporting
sure that we knew that it
documents.
was not right.
The only thing I did want to point out on the exhibit, though, is page 6 of the exhibit is really the part that talks about the park district. In item F, this is the part that talks about the remainder of the trust coming to the park district and the purposes of the trust, or the purposes of the gift. It's for the development of Meadowbrook Park, and in particular, including the expenses to maintain the statues in the park and to assist in the purchase and leasing of the statues. It also goes on to say that the gift may be used either directly or indirectly in whatever manner the board of directors of the park district believes will best carry out the interests of the donors to maintain the statues, and they desire that only the income be used, and that the principal be held unless the board felt that the principal would
Right.
carry out their wishes. So it left it pretty
It's a
flexible.
wonderfully flexible.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
how they wanted it. I
Yeah,
think their
that's
main
just-
interest was the art, but
Yep.
they also knew Meadowbrook probably had a future, and they thought, okay, if the board needed something different
Yeah,
down the
yeah.
road, don't tie their hands,
Yep,
but
yep.
let's state our real intent
Yeah.
of what
Yeah,
they-
no,
that
that's-
they'd love to see.
It's terrific.
So Michael, if you want to talk about any changes you wanted made to either of the resolutions, I can make sure that we get those changed before you sign
Well,
it, or,
Yeah, I mean, my comment pertains to the resolution 2021-10.
Uh-huh.
And it is simply that the way that resolution is written, it seems to focus on the Wandell Sculpture Garden. Well, in point of fact, this
Yeah.
gift is for the entire park.
uh-huh,
And while the Wandell Sculpture
Uh-huh.
Garden is certainly an eligible part of it, I would suggest rewording the first paragraph to say, and maintains the Wandell Sculpture Garden and other statues throughout Meadowbrook Park, and intends to do so
Well,
into
another
the
art,
future.
or do you want to put in just
Or-
statues?
Well, they do reference
Statues.
statues
Okay.
in the will.
And I would prefer that it said sculpture or
Yeah.
artwork, but that's not what they said.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that was
Well,
the
and
kind
it's
of common
Wandell
vernacular at
Sculpture
that
Garden,
time.
and that's all you, yeah. but-
Just, I'm just
you're
interpreting
saying we could
what
use
part I
that.
know about.
Okay.
And then in the third paragraph, I would strike mention of the Wandell Sculpture Garden altogether and simply say that that this gift will ensure continued development, operation, and maintenance of the sculpture program in Meadowbrook Park for future generations.
Yeah, I
It
think that's
just-
better.
yeah.
Just an example, when I talked to Michael about it, we have art in the Timponi Grove, so technically
Yes.
not that area. So we have different areas
Right,
that are
right.
named to us. I think in their minds, it was, the commonly vernacular Wandell Sculpture
Yeah.
Garden
Yeah.
that we probably all refer to, or the collection,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, but it
And-
really
and-
could be anywhere.
Yeah, no, we're just thinking in a broader sense of the whole park, yep.
Yeah, I
yep,
agree.
I
I
told
think
Michael
that's
I
a really good
appreciated
idea.
that,
I
because
agree.
I was so
Okay.
blind to it,
Yep.
I didn't see it.
I just want to make sure it's for the first whereas,
Yes.
develop, operate, and maintain the Wandell Sculpture Garden and other statues within Meadowbrook Park.
Well, I said throughout
Throughout.
Meadowbrook Park, but
I
yeah.
missed that word. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to confirm. Okay, throughout Meadowbrook Park. And then for the second one, strike Wandell Sculpture Garden, and it should read for the development, operation, and maintenance of the sculpture program in Meadowbrook Park.
I don't think statues is inappropriate. I don't
Um,
think that's a broad enough word. I think sculpture
okay.
is
Yeah,
better
I-
because, to me, a statue is a
Okay.
is a person or
Yeah.
or a creature.
All right.
So
so-
a sculpture will cover a
So,
wider range of
and other
elements.
sculpture throughout
Yep,
I got
Meadowbrook
it.
Park.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm fine with that. I just,
I am too.
yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
so-
that ties in with sculpture later on.
And it's Wandell sculpture, so.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
Yep,
true.
good thinking.
Yeah,
So we could do one of two things. We could table it and have the revised resolution come back next month, or if you want to approve it as revised, I can make these changes before Michael signs it. It's up to you, whatever you prefer.
I think we should just take, just
Yeah, I
say
mean-
the changes,
Oh.
we'll accept it as we've revised it and
Okay,
gone.
as
There's no
revised.
point in
if, yeah.
adding it to the next agenda.
And I'm just curious, Katie, what do you think the return on the income will be generated from this?
Well, yeah, Roger was.
Because we can't do a quasi endowment, right, because we're not the foundation.
Well,
Can we?
we can, yeah, we can, and this is really the best way to do that by setting up a separate
fund.
account, a separate fund. So, we already are kind of doing that with the English trust money. So, you know what, the best thing for me to do would be to get estimates from Busey Wealth Management to come back to you with that information. But if you base it off of what we're getting, for the return on the English trust, that's about 2.5%, but that's before fees of 0.4. So,
That's
2%.
not standard market rates for like endowments. Those are closer to 4.
Yeah, well,
So, maybe not right
maybe
at
not
this
right
moment,
now.
but in
'cause ours
general
has
over
been
the
ours has been
lifetime.
higher in the past.
But I guess I'd be curious to know what
Right.
this is a significant chunk, and so
Right.
just to earn 2% seems
Well,
like.
and the market's been roaring, and so if we're only getting 2%.
Yeah, I just
I'd
didn't
say
know what
2%.
I can't remember what our financial tools are, right? When I was on the foundation, we have
Right.
like that's a quasi endowment, which allows us to spend principal if needed, but earns income as if
Right.
it were an endowment. And I feel like the return was sort of at 4.
Yeah, we're not getting that.
I think that's what you,
So,
don't quote me, I feel like that's what U of I Foundation
Yeah,
is
I think
using
that's
it for,
their expectation
right.
is the
So-
minimum, yep.
So anyway, that's.
well, I'd certainly be comfortable, going ahead and getting this set up, but the board's not tied to this. So like I could spend a month doing more research about where we could get a better return in perpetuity elsewhere and bring that back and we could move it. I
I
just,
assume we could always move it out of.
oh yeah,
English at any
we can
point.
move it at any time. We're not tied to this. So if that's something the board would like me to find something where we can get closer to 4%, then I can try to find something.
Now, as a public body, we are somewhat restricted
Right.
in the kinds
Right.
of things
That's
we can
what I was-
invest it in.
Yeah.
The foundation has more flexibility than we do, but still, it's,
Right, no penny stocks for us.
Well, and
Big
the
bets
thing that
for us.
Nancy said, like, I personally, as the business manager, have the same tools that Busey Wealth Management has without the fees, but I also am managing the whole park district. So being able to set that over there and
Yep,
say, you guys are handling this according to our investment policy, kind of is a little bit of a weight off of my shoulders that's worth that
Absolutely.
fee. But there's other places than Busey Wealth Management that do this service that might not have that same fee. So, because I think they're quoting us 1% in the paperwork, whereas English trusts less than half that. So it would be good to get more information and more quotes, certainly. So I'm happy to do that. But I also wouldn't let that stop you from going ahead and doing this, just so we can get the process finalized with the trust and get it all closed out. So, but a month from now, we could be switching it to something more competitive.
Yeah, I think we would be doing, I mean, part of our job is to maximize
Right.
what we get from this and still be safe. And if we can find a better return, then I think we'd make the Browns happy.
Yeah, well, and
10% is $14,000 roughly.
Yeah.
which our sculpture program's about 20,000 a year, so it's really gonna be helpful. But we have this other 475,000 at Busey Wealth Management too. You combine those together, it's over $1 million. I mean, not combine them, but if you were to take that to another bank or something, it's a substantial amount so I'd be happy to look into it.
Great. All right, I move approval, can I do that, of resolution number 2021-10, resolution to establish the Winona N. Brown and Richard M. Brown Fund.
Yeah.
Do I need to do more than that?
As revised.
As revised, thank you. Yes, as revised.
Seconded.
And is there a second to that?
Second.
Yep, right over here.
Okay. That's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, starting with Roger.
Aye.
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 Okay, and that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. And that brings us to Resolution 2021-11, which is a resolution to authorize opening an investment account at Busey Wealth Management. Now, given the discussion we just had, do we wish to approve this now, or do we?
You really don't. If you want to just give me a month to look into other stuff, I'd be fine with you tabling this, because they're not going to disperse this money to us till we request it. They're holding on to it until we say we're ready for it. So we just won't send that paper in, and we'll say we need 1 more month.
And will we be earning interest on our share of it?
Nope.
No. So in the meantime, so it would behoove us to make a choice.
The better, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine with me. I mean, I
Yeah,
would be.
I guess my only hesitation is, they're going to say, okay, well, as soon as we get that account open and that money goes in there, they're going to present me with a slew of different investment options that are going to lock the money into stuff. So, then at that point, it'll be a lot harder to switch. So,
You would
So
prefer a month.
better to keep it liquid.
right, because otherwise I'm going to tell them, well, our board wants me to look into some stuff. You can't invest it right now. So I think either way, we're not going to earn interest, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it might just be easier to have them hold off on writing the check while I look into it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So if you just want to maybe move to table this item, or?
I move to table resolution number 2021-11.
Second.
That's moved and seconded. All in favor? Although I think actually under the rules, moving and seconding to table for 1 meeting is actually already done. But, item C, action on resolution 2021-12, determining the amount to be raised by taxation.
Oh, boy.
I think
All
we
right.
we discussed it at the finance study group, and I think you had some approaches and.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot to say. I have kind of a script that I kind of say to the viewers watching at home, but I think I'll save it for next month when we actually go to vote on the resolution or on the ordinance. But this is the very first step in the process of our tax levy. So our tax levy isn't actually finalized until April, end of April, sometimes even May at this point, so the county runs behind. And so we base a lot of our estimate for our levy off of a lot of guesswork and best estimates from information that we have or don't even have yet. Some of the information, like the final EAV, is stuff that's not finalized until the end of April. So this information is based on, we do know that the change in the consumer price index is 1.4%. And the way our levy is based is it's the prior year's tax extension for the tax capped funds times the change in the consumer price index is the new money that we're allowed to receive. And then on top of that, there's an additional amount for any new property that's added on to the EAV that year. So it's a complex formula. It's kind of out of our hands, how it's calculated, but if we don't levy enough, we can't capture what we are allowed to. So it's kind of this catch-all of, well, we have to estimate extra for these unknown factors that aren't determined yet. And in this case, and in the last several years, that unknown factor is really the status of the hospital cases, because if the hospital cases were to resolve themselves between the period we've submitted our levy and when the levy's finalized, we have the risk of, if they were to be added back onto the tax rolls, that we haven't levied enough to accept the new property. So the last several years, we've kind of, I've presented these options of 20, 25, and 30%, which is a little bit confusing because that's not the actual percentages. What it is I create the best probable estimate of the levy, and then I times, which is already more than the last year because you already are going to have an increase for the CPI and the estimated new property. So whatever that is, then I take that probable estimated amount and times it by 20, 25, and 30% to present these options to you in this table. And then I'm asking you to pick one of these or advise me on how you'd like me to change it, because really you can pick any option you want. These are just three that I presented for you. And last year, Michael did tweak it a little bit and we changed it. So just so that you know that's an option, that these aren't the only options. You can really choose anything you'd like. But if you look at the table, basically when you pick one of the percentages, the 20, 25, and 30, then that line item goes into these gray boxes. That's where those get filled in. And this statement right here is the actual black box. Whichever one you pick and those boxes get filled in, this is the black box ad that goes in the paper. And so this is what people will see. And so you can see, even though it says 20%, the actual increase year to year is 22.99% for that 20% option. So you can that kind of reiterates what I was saying, is it's not actually 20, 25, and 30. It's these other figures that are calculated in there of the estimated amount that we already know based on the information we have at this point in time.
Do you have one you're more comfortable with? How are you?
I'm more comfortable with the 25 or the 30. The 20 makes me a little uncomfortable.
Okay, well then I'm gonna cross that one off.
Yeah. So, but I mean, again, it's the board's purview. I mean, the risk is that if the hospitals did get added, that we would leave money on the table that we could have collected. But I mean, our property taxes will go up substantially. It just makes it a lot more complex. Like if we wanted to analyze later, the amount, since the entire property tax levy is a pie, if you don't grow the pie pieces by 100% of what they would have been worth, it becomes a lot harder later to figure out if we wanted to consciously choose to reduce our levy based on the properties that had previously been added that have now been added again. Because at some point in time, Carl was taxable. That's what kind of caused this problem. But now they've grown a lot. And so when they come back on, there'll be a portion that was taxed before and now is getting added as new. Right. And then there's a portion that's going to get added as new that's never been added. And the goal would be to kind of maybe try to figure out which portion was the old portion that got added twice, that you could maybe choose to reduce your levy consciously, knowing that that's really going to cause you an exponential issue down the road. But it also, saves the taxpayers now who have taken overpaying that portion of the pie, that they should get some relief. So it's something that I think our goal and our strategy would be to accept every dollar we could so that we could consciously and very accurately do that calculation. And if we don't accept it all, it'd be more difficult, but it's not impossible.
I'm sure the hospitals know exactly what that number is.
Under the last penny.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but we're going to want to take some
of course. I'm just
careful
meaning
time to look at it. Yeah.
If you needed to know,
well,
sure,
they would be a good resource.
In some of the hearings that I was in, though, when it did get close, because the Board of Review was talking about adding all of the Carl and OSF properties, I think it was 2 years ago, and I went to the county and there was all these hearings. And that was one of the things they were saying, is all of these assessments you've given us are way too high. So they were already arguing about the dollar amounts. So I don't know that they know that, because I think it's all based on assessments, that they don't have to be assessed because they're tax exempt.
But, meaning,
Yeah.
I bet they have their own version of
Yeah.
what they would consider those two sides.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
that's gonna
I
be part of
think-
their lawyer's work.
I think we should tell people at home that their taxes will not go up 25%.
That is true. So your own individual tax bill will not. It's that our levy in total will, but your tax bill won't go up by more than the change in this consumer price index or some other very small amount. And that's really kind of proven in this chart that I gave in the memo. You can see, like, even though the board selected the plus 20, the 25% option, the taxes only went up 1.9. So last year, the option that Michael helped us craft was plus 23.5 is what it was. And, but our actual increases to the total taxes is in this kind of column right here that says annual percent increase, and it was 3.83.
Right.
So that's really the amount that people's bills probably actually went up, but,
I just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely.
I appreciate
Right,
that.
and-
We do.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
think that's something we need to do at every opportunity.
I mean, that's-
If- The only reason that those percentages are so high is to cover the potentiality of losing, because once we don't get it, we never get it. It's not
Ever.
gonna,
Yeah,
it's never
'cause-
gonna ever come back, and so we have to cover
And
ourselves.
it's, every year, we have to pick a number without full information.
Yep.
Yes.
Even if the hospital stuff wasn't hanging there, we
Yes.
have to
Yes,
pick a
that's right.
number
Yep.
without full information.
Yeah.
And it puts us in a bind, and if we don't aim too high and come in too low, we lose the opportunity forever. So it's a shaming device. And anyway, as you
Yeah.
can well imagine, Michael's sitting here again with a suggested different number.
I'm happy to accept it.
I would suggest that we pick the middle option, only reduce it to 8,771,000. That will drop the number in the black box there to below 28%. I think it'll make it 27.9. And it would then drop the one in the middle one down below to 24.9 instead of a 25.07 or whatever. And it's there's not a whole lot of difference between those two dollar-wise.
Yeah.
And that's my 2 cents worth on where we ought to go. But
And why are you doing that?
I just, if maybe I'm a slave to seeing these numbers. It shrinks. It's not a huge amount, but it just looks like a little bit less.
Okay,
Not
so it's
quite.
$7.99 as opposed to $8. That's-
Anchor
okay.
pricing.
Okay. That's all right. I mean, I just wanted to know what.
Fundamentally, that's right. It's entirely psychological.
Okay.
Maybe it'll reduce the phone calls we get from 1 to 0. So, I mean, we really get very few calls about it, but there have been some, and I think Tim has usually fielded them, and he does a really great job explaining it, so.
Yeah, and it's not a simple, straightforward explanation either.
discussion.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to do this, but the risk to the long-term vitality of the park district, if it's a forever organization, this is the best way to manage this particular process.
Right.
I would add too, we have no insight. We're not involved in the lawsuit, so we'd have no inside knowledge of and generally read it in the papers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're compelled to insulate your situation,
Right. It's the rules and regulations that are forcing us to do this. We would not be doing it this way if we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, if we weren't
Wouldn't have
subject
to.
to tax caps, we could increase or decrease without any risk to our future year of being able to increase again.
Yep,
So,
Yep.
we're kind of stuck with that.
Yeah, so this isn't an exercise in wringing the most tax money that we
Right.
can. It's an exercise in being as fiscally responsible long-term
right?
Yes.
as we can.
The last couple of years, I know MTD seems to be the first black
Oh,
box, so
yeah.
there's always seems to be a article in the newspaper that does explain it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
If
sort
you
of.
read the second page, they'll go into the explanation.
Yes.
But it makes good headlines.
I'm going to add that to my script when I talk about it. I like how you said that.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely make that change based on what Michael just told me of that dollar amount that he wants. And I'd be very happy for you to approve this as revised, and I can move forward with getting the black box printed in our normal timeline. That said, we also do have an extra month built into this process because the due date for the levy is actually not till the 4th Tuesday of December or something. So we're kind of always the first one out of the box, in the box. The black box, I don't know. But, you know, we could wait until November to do this part and then approve it in December, but
Just do it.
We do have a meeting next week. I don't know. I'm
yeah,
just throwing it in.
I
if
could
that
bring the
helps.
revised one back there. It's up to you guys. I can
want
make
on the
it.
agenda.
That would be a good opportunity for me to get Michael to sign it either way, if you approve it tonight or not.
I don't see any reason not to improve the
No, I don't.
revised
I
form
agree.
tonight. I don't, is that, yeah.
You're gonna have to give us a number again, Michael, though.
Eight,
Oh, geez.
8,771,000.
That's it?
Kind of. It's gonna be that number plus the bond money to get this bottom number is the one that you put in this blank.
Yeah,
So hold on, I'll get it for you.
well, I think, yeah, the bottom one ends up being 9,660,585.
Yes.
Which is 24.9% instead of 25. Right, want me to make this motion?
Go for it.
Who's-
So I move to approve the resolution 2021-12, determining the amounts estimated to be necessary for the 2021 levy payable in 2022 upon taxable property is 8,771,000 at 24%, 24.9%. Is that sufficient?
9,660,585.
Sorry.
Yeah, is the grand total. I mean,
So, yeah, the grand total is 9,660,585
And the 24.9% is good.
and 24.9%.
Whatever it is, I'll second it. Nothing like being really careful, is there?
Next time I could just bring my laptop and
Okay.
get it all done for you and have it ready to go.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote to approve this, starting with Cedric.
I,
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously, with all 5 commissioners voting.
yeah, okay.
Okay. IEPD credentials.
I think we're on,
Item
let's
E.
see, item D, capital improvement 2022.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I
D.
didn't see that either.
Item D.
Where did I,
The discussion.
You missed D and E.
where did I misplace that? It is absolutely there on the agenda, and
Yeah.
I have apparently misplaced my copy of that.
I have a question about this while Michael is looking.
Got mine.
That's a staple, two-pager.
Okay, it's UIAC capital
Ah.
improvements, and I don't have a question anymore.
Okay.
I was thinking it was the outdoor pool. That's good.
I can start going through it if you'd like.
Yeah, I did find it. I flipped it over when I was reading it earlier.
I'll pull it up on the screen as well, and you should have it in front of you as part of your packet.
Yeah, it's nice and big on my paper here.
So there's no action tonight on this. This is just our typical review of the draft capital budget for next year. Capital project, staff teams met on a number of occasions developing our prioritized list, our 5-year capital plan, and then ultimately the draft capital budget that you have in front of you tonight, and then we'll bring back in the November meeting for the formal approval. And so it's kind of starting with the revenue section, the bond sales actually December 2021. And what we're anticipating is the $872,510. And then our typical revenue lines for tributes and donations and ADA projects And then as part of this budget, it's really focused on Prairie Play. This is the first year where we're accumulating large amount of funds for the eventual replacement of the structure. And so we're anticipating $100,000 in donations for that, and that's what we've accounted for here in this budget. And then, so total revenues is $1,049,510. And then going into the expenditure section, ADA projects, typically we get around $55,000 for capital initiatives of that $65,000, and that's going to pay our consultant for the ADA transition plan update. And then another item I would note is the vehicles and equipment is $215,000. That includes 2 3/4-ton trucks, 1-ton dump truck, a half-ton truck, a brush chipper, 2 trailers, and 1 Gator utility vehicle.
Ooh.
The $215,000 is pretty in line for what we typically have for vehicles and equipment each year. And, you know, just as a reminder, it's a schedule that we have that we're continuing to do replacement on our vehicles and equipment, so we don't end up having a backlog on any one capital year that would then take over a lot of the revenue that we generate.
And it's good to be able to do that because we had lean years when we couldn't.
Right.
But
Are we concerned at all about current vehicle prices and abilities to get products?
We have lengthy delays in receiving our vehicles and equipment right now, and I don't think it's going to get better next year either. Yeah, it's a concern.
so if we don't spend it, it's not because we're not trying. It's because it's not available.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Katie had in her review of the capital budget, the tractor that was, you know, out to bid
Oh, yeah, that we just
last
got,
February,
yeah.
and so.
Yep. And we got 2 wide area
The
mowers
garbage truck
last
still
month.
has not been received at this point. Last we heard it was November, so. And that was also approved, I think, maybe in February last year
Yeah.
as well. So then a lot of these lines are kind of those typical expense lines that you see each year for hazard tree work, and they're all funded at the level that we typically do every year as well, so no major changes for construction crew projects. Technology, our operations and recreation, small equipment. And then in our typical trails projects line, this is where we again start setting aside funds for the Prairie Play project for $40,000 in that area. And then our hardscapes and fencing, this is the second year that we're accumulating funds, $100,000 each year. So that was in 21 and in 2022. And that's for the color coat and crack seal of the Blair tennis courts. And then 50,000 of that we're holding on to for any ITEP expenditures that we may.
yeah.
We're not anticipating a lot since we're getting the 100% local match, but there's potential that we may have some overages that we may need to cover or maybe weren't a part of the grant. So we're just making sure that we're accounting for any of those potential issues. So then our typical UIC capital improvements, $20,000. And then Crystal Lake Park phased rehab, where we've been putting in funds each year for continued improvements at Crystal Lake Park. And this was initially towards the ITEP project, but that's when we were believing that we were paying 20% of the local match. So now we're redirecting that to the road project. We do have some concerns on what the bids are going to come in at, and it's a big priority for us to get that road taken care of. So we want to make sure that we have adequate funding for that when that comes to bid. And then the Meadowbrook Prairie Play line, we had $300,000 set in this capital year for that project. And then contingency right now is at $51,000. And if we have any remaining contingency at the end of the year, and once we get into the project from this capital year, we would look to utilize those funds for the Prairie Play project as well. And so, like I said, there's no action tonight. It's really just to put in front of the board again. We had it at Finance Study Group as well. If there's any questions, we can certainly make any adjustments for next month if we need to.
I'll
So-
just mention, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask about the Prairie Play budget. I mean, when we had the presentation, we saw lots of things that had much higher dollar price. I mean, I know we were trying to balance the fact that it's not the only playground, but it needs to have a wow factor. Are we comfortable with $350,000?
So
And
that's,
I
this
know we
is
have this-
for one of the 2 years that we're
Okay,
accumulating
thank you.
funds.
Yeah.
Spreading
So
it
it's
out.
really gonna be closer to $770,000.
But are we concerned about that number?
But yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
to then answer that, yes, yeah, like Tim said.
I mean,
Yeah.
just, in the public opinion.
Right.
Not necessarily staff, but, so we'll get more information as we go on that side of things.
Yeah, yeah.
The more we consider doing customized play, the more the cost will go up. Based upon some of the preliminary analysis that Upland did, we're okay with this number, with some of the more traditional play equipment and some level of customization. But if we move more towards all custom, I think we'll have to, just reevaluate, how we want to proceed. One of the things I wanted to mention is that, as Andy mentioned, several of these line items are repeating annually numbers. And the one that I mentioned when we reviewed this is the hazard tree work. We may need to bump that up over time. We're seeing a lot more of our large trees decline. That large English oak in Carl Park, the proposal we got, not to take it down, but just to make it something that our staff could work with our existing equipment, was $4,000. Thankfully, as Rich indicated in his board report, we've been able to find a crane that we can lease, and it's going to cost a lot less, so we can preserve more of that. But as I see more and more of these really beautiful old trees declining, that number may need to be bumped up.
That used to be, what, 200,000?
Yeah, back when we first were contracting out a lot of our, we did I don't know if you remember, we did a wide sweep of all our parks, removed all the hazard wood, and it was a big number at that point, but we've caught up with it, and we're doing pretty well.
With Emerald, yeah, I mean, when we had dealing with Emerald Ash, it was more like 75,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
That we were spending on tree maintenance
Yep.
or hazard work.
It's nice to have money like that to spend.
Now, any other questions on this? This is not up for approval tonight, but just so we are aware of what's being proposed. Okay, are we ready to move on to, okay, sorry. I got things shuffled in my packet here. So,
Is that-
action on ordinance 2021-07, revising Chapter 8 of the Personnel Manual of the Urbana Park District.
Well, as you know, at the study session, we spent last week, I think, discussing this very change. I think we went through a lengthy presentation. I have my notes here, I can go through them. I know Meredith wasn't here. But essentially, we're at the point where staff's recommending we take action, and we need to get something in place to ensure that we have a safe workplace. It's very difficult because we know, across the nation, there's a lot of different thoughts and opinions, and, it's, probably riddled with misinformation and different opinions and whatnot, so it makes it very challenging. Certainly, if it was clear cut and we knew, it would be easier, I think, for, wide margins of populations to accept that. But nonetheless, we're still in the responsibility of caring for our youngest participants, for all of our older participants, guaranteeing that we have a safe workplace, and the overall bigger goal to reopen the Park District at full capacity so that as we open a health and wellness facility, we'll have no shortage of programming and people interested in coming to the facility. So I think the leadership team, gave a lot of thought. We looked at, all the options we're aware with, but certainly relied on our, leaders, the president, the governor, University of Illinois chancellor, our mayor of Urbana, executive director Julie Pride, recommending to get your staff groups, workplaces vaccinated. It's just a really critical need. I continue to say we're not going to be able to wear masks or wash our hands out of the pandemic. We need more people to get vaccinated. So, the message we're trying to promote is everyone that can get vaccinated should get vaccinated. Certainly, we have in this proposal two exemption approaches. There's a religious exemption and a medical exemption. So anybody that would want to pursue that certainly could pursue that, but we've got to protect the workplace. We have other workers at the Park District that are fearful of coming to work. They have families, they're caretakers, they have older adults, they have immunocompromised family members that either can't be vaccinated or are not for whatever age reasons at this point. So it's probably a tough situation to be put in as a district, but it clearly is the right way to move forward to get the district back to a healthy place. We know there could be more treatments, could be more vaccines, there could be more testing protocols that make a lot of things easier. We're certainly open to that at staff. We could certainly revise our policy as new things come, but we don't have an answer for when staff ask, how can I be safe at work? So we're trying to listen to every voice, make sure that we're hearing everybody and give an opportunity. Derek and I have followed up with sit-downs with staff that wanted to talk. We tried to reiterate, the positions, listen to what, they're telling us, but we're left in charge ultimately to guarantee a safe workplace. So it's a very critical recommendation, but we stand by that, and we'd ask the board to move forward on this. I have other talking points I brought from my presentation that I shared with staff. I'd be happy to go through that. If anybody wanted to, hear those talking points again, certainly could do that. I think we shared the essence of each one of those at the study session with the board, so we can proceed as you would like. There's, every reason to act on it in a, reasonable manner as far as without delays. Each month we do nothing, we have less of a safe workplace. We have no message to the public and no message to the staff or other groups that we interface with or our partners. So it appears to be a clear choice for staff, although one that, has heavy components with it. I'd be happy to go over my points if you'd like. I know, again, I don't want to belabor the meeting or the item on the agenda, but I think I'd be happy to if we needed to be reminded or understand what those mean.
Well, in fairness to review, there, give or take 50 full-time staff in the district.
Plus all of our seasonal and part-time.
Plus,
So we often
yeah,
forget the
and-
hundreds of other people
Yeah,
that work here
right.
that, we're responsible for and their families.
And this proposal will, applies both to full-time and to part-time staff,
Correct.
not patrons, but to the staff.
Correct.
And
One comment I would like to make is I would like to apologize to those staff members who have been here for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Had I thought about this, I would have moved to amend the agenda so that we could have considered this first. I know that some of the stuff we talk about will probably put you to sleep, but nevertheless, I apologize for not having thought of that.
Michael, did you want me to go over any of the talking points?
Well, I think we have all heard them. I think if you could do so quickly, I think it'd be worthwhile just to refresh our
Meredith
memory.
was the only one who wasn't at the.
Yeah.
Right, and it'll explain to the watching public
Sure.
the basis that,
Be
on which
happy
we've
to.
come to this point.
Essentially, we talked about, it's really, we're at that time. We've got nearly 700,000 dead Americans. There's no real
You have some.
effort or opportunity beyond vaccinations to change that. It's largely a pandemic of the unvaccinated. There's people dying unnecessarily that shouldn't have to die. So obviously that could be our family members, our children, our grandkids, anybody could be one of those victims. So, it's not, something insignificant. It's the biggest thing that's ever happened to our country. I'll put it that way. So you have to pay attention and take it very seriously. I also believe, and I think the leadership team believes, and our leaders are saying, it's a call to leadership. It's time for people to stand up and do something, that we can save lives, can make a big impression with our local economy and try to get our business, back up and running. I can't think of another way, to send that message, other than we have something in place to help guarantee your safety. There are no guarantees, but it puts you in a much safer position. The Urbana Park District is a health and wellness organization. In many ways, we're not unlike medical providers. We work with the most vulnerable. I just talked about CU Special Rec and all the, people that come with multiple health issues already to our programming. All the inclusion aides, all of the people that, interface with those, whether they're in our facility or when they're in our facility. So we have a grave responsibility. The same with our oldest adults. That same situation is there. We share school buildings. We're at the Indoor Aquatic Center. We have Splash. We have employees working right in a setting that also has mandates in place. So to the public or to the people that visit or the parents picking up, dropping off, they don't know that there's differences, that some of those people are unvaccinated and there's nothing in place that would guarantee their safety. Over the summer, we observed a lot of our facilities, the feedback we got from parents asking, can you give me a vaccinated person? Hey, are the lifeguards in the chair vaccinated? Hey, are all the people that are in your buildings or at the front desk or serving something at an event, are they, vaccinated? So it's not like nobody cares or they don't ask. I think there's a high intense issue of, can you get that in place? Can you guarantee that? Maybe I shouldn't come to you. Maybe I'll go somewhere else that does. So we have to pay attention to the public in that equation. Our new health and wellness facility is dedicated to promoting good health. I don't know how we could look away and not take it seriously and assume that we're going to be over there talking about health and wellness. Probably could be a vaccine clinic site or a place where people come to get information. So again, modeling after public health that has done this, that's an organization that I would highly lift up and say that's a model. They've asked us to do the same thing. We invited public health to come and talk to our staff. Dr. Vade came, spent as much time as he had available to explain the vaccine, how it works, why should you get it, is important, what are the alternatives, and also made himself available to staff if they had follow-up questions. We did have at least one staff we know that reported they did follow up and got information and ultimately got vaccinated as a result of that ongoing discussion. So again, we tried to think, how can we bring an educational component with real facts, somebody local that we trust to present that information. So I talked about practical reasons or some of the frameworks, and certainly Dr. Vade talked about the medical impacts of being vaccinated or not vaccinated. We know that we've heard OSHA is going to be making a ruling. There'll be perhaps other mandates. Illinois OSHA oversees the public bodies, so we're not sure of how they're going to act, what'll all be in it, but we've heard word they're making a motion, and it's because business and government places are saying we need to get healthy, we need to get safe, we have to get back on track. So I don't know if anybody likes mandates. I can't think of anything. I'm on record for opposing mandates at the state level on things that affect the park district through IAPD, unnecessary rules, publishing things in newspapers, finding cheaper and better alternatives. I don't think you can republish a pandemic or put it in another framework to make it innocuous. So I really think we're at that point. And again, we'll be following whatever guidelines come down our way. I think the other point is, our staff and others are demanding for a safe workplace. That's what OSHA is all about. That's our requirement. And if we're not providing a safe workplace, we're not doing our job. That's the same group that teaches us how to, lift heavy objects, how to keep hazardous materials in our workplace that we use every day, how to work in a confined space or tie yourself off a roof if you're doing roof work. So those same groups would be likely saying, hey, you got to get healthy. You have to do something about that. We've had staff report that they don't feel safe at work. So we've already had, comments, I'll call it complaints, on that side of saying, I don't feel safe here. You're doing nothing to guarantee my safety. Can't you do anything? Why won't you do anything to make this a safe workplace? So I think there's a very compelling message from, many of the staff members, whether they're vaccinated but have unvaccinated family or caregivers. I don't have a good answer. The only answer I could come up is mask up and hold on to your paid leave, because you're going to need it. We're at risk. We're in a very risky situation. The type of work we do, the people we interface with, if a tree goes down or a pipe busts, there's going to be shoulder to shoulder people. I don't think we're going to be 6-footing distances or any of that. We've got a crisis, I'm jumping in, if, whoever's on the site. So I think we need to be thinking of those situations where people are forced by situation to throw any best practices out the window and take care of business that could be deadly as a mistake, out of our control. So we also have to understand that risk factor. A little bit of that is out of control. We also know, I just repeated, but we have people working in other buildings with different populations. Those people at risk, we're at risk from being in there. So making sure that the workers have a safe opportunity to show up to work, and that we're modeling, really good practices at this district. I already mentioned where we work and all those shared facilities, but we've really got to think about the future. How are we going to reposition this district and gain our business back and the trust of the public and get people to want to work here? I think having a mandate in place to guarantee work that it can be as safe as we can is probably one of the only options. There's other things we can do in those areas, but that's one you can't get over. You can't just, well, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to go do these other things. We did discuss in our study session the idea of incentives. Could we incentivize staff to do that? Generally, those work, as I understand, through payment of some type. We have hundreds of employees, so it'd be very difficult, I think, for the Park District to put together what I'd call compelling financial rewards to get people to consider strongly to vaccinate. It does work in many workplaces that are able to afford that. I would also mention we have provided ample and generous benefits. We've shut down for a year and a half, encouraged people to work at home, don't worry about your normal duties, work as much as you can. We've been as incredibly flexible with family first as the main option, and how we've directed that message. I think we're a standout agency, and anybody that would say different, I would argue with them, because there's been no end to the supportive benefits and the cost. There's real dollars with that. So I call that our incentive program. Lastly, I'd close on the insurance side. It's an ugly thing to talk about, but if one person would become seriously ill at this district, we're all going to pay for it. And the taxpayer is that main group that would be, and that hasn't happened, fortunately, because we've been as careful as we can be, but you can't guarantee that. I wouldn't suggest a hopeful approach is really your insurance plan. So all of those factors put together in a very unnecessary and untimely and inconvenient package for all of us is really forcing our hand, I believe, to take this step. I wish we could step back and think of 5 years ago when we worried about how can we get potholes in streets and more trails built and much more mundane Park District elements. Now we're forced to be in an arena where we're literally fighting for people's lives and standing up for them. And so I want to be on record as the director at the Park District that we took the high road and that it may save lives. And if even anybody's family, we may not even know that it might save somebody's life. But I can sure tell you about the deaths and the people that I know that have died through the pandemic. So we could spend a lot of time talking about that if we chose to. So again, the staff leadership recommendation is we need to take this step. What comes in the future, what next steps, what changes, what remedies, we're all waiting for that. We hope those things come. There's another new treatment in a pill form, that could be available. Unfortunately, it's after you get the virus and you're ill. So I wouldn't personally want to risk and make that my main plan. Just like the people that are dying on ventilators, begging for the vaccine and are finding out they can't get it, it's too late. So those are the landscape that's in front of us. And we have to choose how to walk carefully and safely through that. I don't relish any board member anywhere, school board, public body, anywhere that would have to make these choices. But if it saves lives, it's definitely worth it. That's what I tried to share as much as I could with staff. Certainly we talked about that at the study session. And I think that's where the recommendation stands.
Well, speaking for myself, I want to emphasize, I think this board has, over the years, shown great concern for the staff, great respect for the staff. And I am indeed loath to vote anything in that is going to cause distress to staff members who truly believe as they believe about vaccines and whether or not they're an appropriate thing. The freedom not to get vaccinated, okay, is there, and yet that's putting other people at risk. I happen to personally know somebody who refused to get vaccinated, lobbied very hard with other people to keep them from getting vaccinated. A person in good health, under 60 years old, a regular exerciser, and has now been 6 weeks in the hospital, run up enormous medical bills. And it's needlessly so. Had that person been vaccinated, at the very least, might have still ended up getting ill. The vaccine has no guarantee on that. But it is a very, very strong guarantee against these absolutely disastrous outcomes. And they are happening out there, even to people who are seemingly in very good health to begin with. The virus is a crapshoot for everybody. And it's a tough situation. Nobody can be guaranteed that they've got the right answer. But the numbers lean so heavily towards the vaccination end of things. I with great regret to the upsetting and causing consternation for our valued staff who have worked very hard here for many years, I believe it's the correct thing to do.
Yeah. I think, well, I agree. It's a very difficult choice because it's such a very difficult situation. Well, it's a difficult choice in that we don't want people to think that we're not listening to what they have to say. But on the other hand, I think that all of us feel that this is making the right decision, and I don't think that from our actions over the years that you would look at this. I hope that people wouldn't look at this as saying, oh, this is just the first step in the door, and the park district is going to be putting all of these restrictions on us. That's not our plan. That's not our idea. That's not how we do things. This change, that just seems the right way to do it, is just to protect the staff from this particular problem. And we're not looking to enlarge beyond this step.
And I would also go back to the fact that unlike almost every other agency, we did not furlough anybody.
Correct.
Who was a full-time staff member. We stuck by every single person who was coming to work, and I know that there were dangers involved in that, particularly for those people who absolutely had to come in to do it. Not everybody can work remotely. We understand that, but we stood by and took a very strong stand that we value the staff that we have. We want to keep them, and that is why we refused, like certain other agencies, to let people go or to put people on furlough they had a job through this thick and thin. And, you know, we're down to a pinch point, tough choice. And again, I think this is the right one.
If you're ready, I'll make the motion. Is anybody else?
Just had one more statement. I
Oh.
think I speak for the leadership team, and I said it to the staff. I think we love our work family. We don't want anyone to be harmed. We feel deeply responsible to guarantee their safety. We probably wouldn't choose this in some other situation, you know, but this is probably the best option we have to try to protect people and make sure that they go home safe. So we wanted to make that clear to staff and to the board. You know, that's our personal feelings. That's what we're trying to share and get the point across. Obviously, everyone has to hear that, but that's where we are tonight.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, of course.
For the last 18 months, we've been making decisions. Those decisions were based on the safety of our participants, our staff, everybody involved. All of those decisions, the leadership team and other staff had to go by CDC guidelines, public health guidelines. This is no different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
All right. I move approval of ordinance 2021-07, revising Chapter 8 of the Personnel Manual of the Urbana Park District.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I believe we owe everybody a roll call vote on this, starting with Roger.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. And again, I know some of you here are disappointed in this choice, and we thank you for coming out tonight and sitting through longer than you should have had to.
You know, when it's 80 degrees out, it doesn't seem like the meeting in January is very close.
It's coming.
Obviously it is.
Well, and is this even going to be an in-person conference? We
Yeah,
don't
we
know, I
just-
guess.
So far, well, they're not even accepting registration yet, actually.
Perfectly clear.
But they are planning for in-person, but I don't know that they've made a determination. I think that they're just kind of waiting because they don't want to accept and then have to give all those refunds
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah.
happened before. So,
I think iParks is planning an in-person board meeting. I think we have a Zoom option, so depending on what, so there may be different parts of that going forward, but we'll get information. But this came through, and obviously we can appoint delegates, and either way, if it's in person or virtual, we can still manage.
This could be one of those meetings that they do a Zoom with for IPRA. They can't, we talked to Dwayne Smith from IPRA last week, 2 weeks ago. And to do the whole conference in a hybrid is like impossible. But they
Right.
talked, there could be some things they do, so this could be one of those they do in Zoom. But it seems like they're planning for in person.
So I think the need
It
to
is.
have, delegates appointed. Always happy to serve if people are uncertain of their whereabouts.
Well, are there any commissioners planning to attend if there is an in-person event presume in Chicago?
I would go.
Pardon?
I would go.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't been in a while. It just depends on you usually need to know by December, conference attendance, right?
Yeah, and I think it's even up to, you can do on-site registration, the fees may be different.
Yeah.
You know, I think the registration part is, can be done later.
yeah, I don't know. Typically, registration fee increases after, I want to say December 2nd, something like that. But we would accommodate any commissioner that wants to go. The only hangup is when a commissioner goes, we have to have a approval item on the January agenda for your conference hotels and stuff, according to our new travel per diem thing. It doesn't apply to staff in the same way that it does commissioners, because commissioners has to be pre-approved for even $1 spent, but the staff have a $1,000 threshold, or that was set by the board. So, but the board members don't apply to that according to the law that was passed for that. So you have to, we just have to know basically before the January board meeting is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. But, and you have to know, we have to know tonight for the delegate.
No, we can table it again until next week. It's not due till November 30th. We just happen to get it in time to put it on this agenda, so it's okay if you want to table it too.
So you're till next week?
We could
I hear
table
you
it to
say
the
next
November.
month.
So
Okay.
typically, we wouldn't even bring this to the November. We would normally bring this to the November regular board meeting.
It just came to
It
the
just happened to
office.
come early enough that we could get it on now.
We thought
so-
with schedules and
Oh,
whatnot,
and
with
start
people's
thinking about it, yep.
uncertainty.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
and we
a
don't
good
always
idea.
have the opportunity to let you guys think for another month about it, so maybe this is nice that
Yep.
you kind of got a heads up. And
Yeah, I think it's just hard to plan. If you knew that the IPRA meeting had a Zoom option, I think that would be,
We did this meeting on Zoom last year.
But
I
we don't know
participated in that.
Yeah.
But just, I don't know right this moment,
then that allows more flexibility.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
little iffy.
or if they'll
Um,
do a hybrid.
I don't know yet if I can attend in person, but I would like to if I could.
Okay.
I don't know of any controversial voting. You know, that's really the key reason. I
Right,
think,
right.
You know, we're urged to do that, is in case there is a critical vote, then you get your vote.
Yeah.
If you're
yeah.
not there, you don't get to vote on it. I don't
Well-
know, but
So if we put 2 people down on the list, could we finish it tonight? Or would you be willing to serve? Could we
Oh, yeah. and
put
I'm
the
like,
names on a list and then we'd be done with it? And then whoever else can go, and
yeah,
let's do that.
absolutely.
that seems to cover the bases.
I mean, we could even put Meredith, even if she can't go. I mean, we could put
Or she could be the
Cedric.
15th alternate.
We could, well, we have
yeah.
up to 4, so it
Yeah.
could be Cedric, Meredith,
Yeah.
and then Tim, and
Yeah.
then whoever goes.
And if your schedule changes, we're covered, right?
I mean, it's up to you.
I mean, just so we're clear, there's people that sign up, that go to conference in person, and then skip the meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying that's a
It
good way
does
to.
have-
Well, if you ever been to one, it
I
was
shouldn't
just a
say
real.
skip.
yeah.
I have.
They got delayed.
So you
or
understand the feeling, yes.
Reprogram.
We've definitely put
Oh,
more than
right.
2 names on this
Yeah,
before,
and-
though, just so you
Yeah.
know.
And
Yes, yes.
That's fine. You can put my name down, but not, that's fine. I don't know what I'll be doing, but
Yes, they won't come and get us
Put
if we
Ced-
don't
and
show
Cedric-
up.
and then Tim, that's fine.
But Cedric, then you, then Tim?
I mean, does the order matter?
no,
I don't know. I don't know.
Then I should be last.
Aren't there delegates and alternates? That
Yeah.
was the old
Yeah.
way.
I was
that
just
we-
trying to
It does-
give
yes.
deference to the
Oh.
commissioner.
I tend to be the alternate, just as to
Right.
Oh,
give
okay.
deference to the
I
commissioners.
see.
Gets the voter, if there's anything to vote on.
Correct. But if you're the alternate and they're not there,
You
then I
vote,
could vote.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, right.
That's how we've more or less done it in the
okay,
past.
that's fine.
So should I move to certify that Cedric Stratton, Meredith Blumenthal, and Tim Bartlett are designated to serve as delegates to the annual 2022 business meeting of the IAPD?
Second.
that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. And unless I missed something, I think we have now
Yeah.
completed our agenda.
No, I have a
Oh, wait, with commissioner comments, yes.
As if I don't ever have anything to say.
Yep.
This has to do with the information that comes to the foundation. We were talking about it at dinner tonight. I think when Natalie and Fred were discussing how they were envisioning the future of fundraising for the foundation, they said, well, how soon is, are you starting on Prairie Play? And I said, well, I'm not certain. So I've been thinking about that, and I'm wondering if, I think it would be a good idea, let me say it that way, if we had more information going on a monthly basis to the foundation if they're interested. I mean, to at least for them to have the option, and I don't quite know how we would do it. I would think the administrative report, I mean, the reports that are coming through in the consent agenda, so they could have the whole thing if they were interested in it, or, I mean, I would be happy to, sort of make a summary of all that, because my feeling is the more you know, the more you feel like you belong. And my guess is that since I find out all sorts of interesting things every month that you guys are doing that I don't know that we're doing, these folks who have much less of a connection to the park district will be stunned to find out how much is actually going on that's completely outside of what they understand. And I think that will give them a better sense of the park district. I think it'll give them more pride in the park district. I think it'll make it easier for them to talk about all of the good stuff that the park district is doing when they're doing fundraising.
I can respond. One tool I know we've already discussed and agreed to kind of create on the financial fundraising side.
Yep.
To try to create, basically use our project charts that show
Yep.
timetables, but fold in the foundation projects where they're fundraising, so you could see where
Yep.
you're overlapping fundraising,
Yep.
or there's gaps where you could take on new initiatives.
Right.
So there's that tool to help just communicate what are we fundraising for. Here we've got 3 options like we do essentially. We've got Blair Park, we've got Health and Wellness, we've got Crystal Lake.
Right, and now with something new coming up with the
Maybe
idea of
that
silt removal.
chart, the flow chart would show where the project schedules, where the fundraising, so that's one tool. The other I want to mention, Roger and I both report at the meetings, we could easily coordinate our message.
Yeah.
So like what things, like, we're often at the end of the meeting, so there is an hour and a half already that's occurred
Yeah.
before.
Right.
So trying to provide succinct, brief updates.
But even if we just sent out the reports electronically, if people were interested in that, that would relieve you of the burden of having to try to report on a whole bunch. It would give them a chance to read it in their free time without,
That could be done
Anyway.
easily.
The only thing I would say about that, my experience on the foundation, and it's been a few years now, is that they're mostly focused on fundraising and on things that directly impact fundraising.
right?
So when I talk about things that are somewhat outside that scope, their eyes glaze over.
Thank you,
And,
Roger.
and I can tell what kind of reaction I get, and I've begun to shorten and sharpen my message to focus on those board actions that are going to impact on them. Like this last time I talked about the contract that we approved last meeting with the
Or Prairie Play with Upland
yeah,
Design.
for the Prairie Play consult. And that, they really perked up with that.
Okay.
But there's other things that I may talk about that truly their eyes glaze over. And like Tim says, we're at the end of an hour and a half. And
I
how
agree with-
long did we spend on talking about whether an item should be a liability or an equity item? What was
Probably
that,
in-
10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes we spent on that? And after that, it's like, oh, God, what does the board representative have to say? I mean, that's just the feel that you get.
Just to augment Roger's statement, I started out reporting the way I do to you all, multiple things, all the areas, something for everybody.
Yeah.
Same thing, like, oh gosh. get this
Oh,
in.
okay, well, if they're not interested, then
So,
that's,
I don't know if sending on the 3 departmental reports would be, because we kind
Yeah.
of spell it all out there. Those are things, I don't know the timing, I think they're all ready, or they could come, as.
They were ready on Friday, so
Yeah.
the meeting was.
So-
I mean, I just want to say that Derek and Andy, I really appreciate the capital budget reports. Is there some way we could do a quarterly report with visuals like that? Would that be I mean, I feel like if there was a visual, like sort of progress to rather than just charts, like here's the progress on X and here's an upcoming project. Like if the foundation didn't see the Upland Design, presentation that UpDeck has probably seen, we have seen.
Sure.
That's a very inspiring
That's true.
presentation for fundraising, right?
Yeah, that's a
Just
great
though
idea.
narrowing it
Yeah.
to the projects they're working on.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it
yeah.
becomes a
No.
huge distraction, and we're fighting to
Right.
get people to fundraise on that group and not
yeah,
joyride
okay.
and come along for the get along, go along.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
We need active soldiers working in the field, but if we can focus on our projects with some visuals that amp them up to go out and ask for money, I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could carve out quarterly more than the end, or like an intentional 25 minutes.
We have our joint meeting too in May.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's another
Yeah, but I don't think
opportunity to
that's
showcase.
enough.
I don't think it's enough.
no,
I
think
mean,
the
having
quarterly
been on
is
your,
great.
having been in that role, it was always, I felt the disconnection, Nancy, that you're also talking about, and how to communicate, and also at the end, and it's an hour and a half, and yes, it was different topics, but not as focused,
Right.
so.
We're more than willing to share information, but if it starts to pry them away from their primary task,
Yeah.
I think finding ways to pile on to the message of, hey, you.
Yeah,
need to
then
do
that's
that.
not good, yeah,
And-
yeah.
And I'm concerned right now, I think they are feeling, we went from the campaign for the next century.
To the health and wellness.
Right to health and
Yep,
wellness.
right, yep, yep.
And then we're going to Prairie Play. And I'm concerned for them in terms of, do they feel overburdened? Right now, I mean, I think they kind of pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps to say, hey, we need to do more in fundraising for health and wellness. I'm reluctant to push too much more on them in terms of expectations of what's coming up that we need money for.
Right, well, it wasn't necessarily things that we need money for, it was
But
just
that's
sort of
what-
keeping them
that's
up,
what
but
their
that's how they'll
focus is.
perceive it. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
That's what their
Yeah,
focus
okay,
is.
well, then I think, then that's fine, I think the quarterly report is maybe the
Yeah,
best compromise.
that may be a good
Yep,
way to
yeah,
go.
and with pictures, because that always,
Yeah.
it's like spoonful of sugar in the medicine.
You know, I'm visual.
That would be good, though.
No, but I think that's-
like that, though, because not only could you be giving them ideas of what's coming that we need fundraising for, but also to highlight what we've done with the
Right,
money
and
they
that sense of
fund, right?
That's
accomplishment
a
is
good
really
point.
important.
To give
Interesting, good
back.
point.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that.
So,
Because I think the more we talk about what's coming, adds to the anxiety that
Yeah,
Roger's
but
just
if we
talking
could say,
about.
this is what we've
Never a
done.
break, so, I
Right.
mean, we could.
But there
raise-
isn't a break with
fundraise
fundraising.
24/7.
No,
I mean,
there
that
isn't.
is,
We're fundraising.
Yeah, we just don't tell them that in the
Right.
beginning.
I mean, it'd be very easy. I mean, we bill them twice a year to take those two bills and say, okay, what did that money specifically go for? Okay, well, a lot of it went to Crystal Lake just
Yeah,
recently.
yeah.
Right.
And then it went to helping purchase sculpture. It went, so it'd be very easy to put a visual presentation together retroactively to show what we've spent, so.
I got a really interesting fundraising thing from WEFT. And it was sort of a long form postcard in an envelope, asking for money, of course. But they said, so here's what you've given us this much money over the last year. Here are the things that we've done. And they probably listed 3 or 4 new things. And I thought, that is absolute genius, because, you give and you give and you think, well, where's my bucks going?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Understood. Well, I
yeah,
think what Katie said,
Yep,
what appeals
absolutely.
to
Yeah,
that
I like
is,
that.
yep,
you need talking points. If you're able,
Right,
if
and
you're
then-
well versed on, hey, did you know that we got that element over at Blair Park paid for by this? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think you'd benefit, almost in a, what did we get done?
right.
yep,
You
yep.
can talk about, a little about what's on the front, but also reassure, well, we've done this, and those are convincing talking points.
Yeah, yeah.
We have granted it's only once a year, but the new annual priority project
Right.
report that we developed that follows the strategic plan, that is more graphic and illustrative. I wonder if that could be something that we would update quarterly in terms of where we are with some of the different projects that we prioritized the previous year, and that funds have gone towards. That annual report does include a list of everything that we did the previous year with UBF funds. Kind of the forward-looking imagery is a little bit more difficult. We talked some at the
Yeah.
Urbana Parks Foundation fundraising meeting about Prairie Play, and we really won't have anything that's really graphic rich for a while. And so we need to kind of wait until we have that to sell it. I mean, kind of like health and wellness, once we had the renderings and the video, that's when people got really excited. But right now, we have a Mad Lib, so it's.
Yeah, I did show Natalie that one of the Monstrum
There you go.
pages,
Yeah,
so, yeah, I mean, I think people, you have to get them thinking
Right.
big.
Well, and hopefully the schedule chart concept graphic could show, theoretically, health and wellness, maybe we're coming down to land, but Prairie Play is gonna take up. So
Yeah,
that's the
okay.
concept of being able to visually see that. The reality might be overlapping lines that continued, our
I wanted to
efforts.
see that, yeah.
So, but we understand, and I know Roger's thinking, We want to spend lots of time with the enrichment stuff. We love doing that. We could talk each for a half hour, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But probably keeping everyone on message and not distracting them and leaving, that's their last message. So you feel good. It sounds like accomplishments.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Really need
think,
to go
I
out
think you're right,
and
Roger.
call
for that.
somebody that afternoon. Yes, so that's, we just want to
Good
be
idea.
cognizant of
Yeah.
how do we loop it back to the fundraising activity, that we're endeavoring.
So on health and wellness, in short order, we'll have some exciting things to report, as the plans begin to develop. I think
Yeah.
that'll feel really
Right.
enriching for the foundation.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as we develop materials to seek public input, the first of the idea boards, that's something we can share as well. And then obviously, once we have the schematic plans, we definitely want to share that with everybody and anybody to get reactions to. So
Well, every month, I'm sure Roger and I could touch base to,
Yeah,
hey, what do we
definitely.
want to talk about? How do we, you cover this, I'll cover that. So that each month we can report maybe
Yeah,
better,
yeah.
but then we have those other opportunities to, showcase.
And really focus,
Good,
it's
okay.
kind of like gathering of pictures or something might be,
Right,
Sure,
right.
we can work on.
sure.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks for that input. I think
Thanks for
you're
letting
just
us
right.
know, because that'll help get a tool in place, tools
Yeah.
in place to
Right, right.
help
'cause
our
we-
message.
They're such a valuable part of what we're
Yeah.
doing that we need to,
Cultivate.
right, and we need to keep them interested and let them know how valuable their work is to us and what's
Good point.
actually getting done.
Because if all you see is the trench, top of the trench,
Yeah,
it kind of gets hard.
Yep.
I'm thinking also about Blair Park. We think by the end of this month, we'll have some updated renderings and cost estimates for some of the things that we're seeking support from the tennis community and also the Reicherts. And that could be exciting stuff to share with
Yeah,
them.
I
Yep.
agree.
I think
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that gets you motivated.
Yep.
Great. Just what I was hoping for.
Any other commissioner comments? Hearing none, I think we've exhausted our agenda. I will declare us adjourned.